Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Mokuton Naruto was the son of a Tsunade Senju part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Senju Estate, Konoha. She snarled viciously at the man before her. Someone she thought knew her better than any other but had gone behind her back to put their son in jeopardy once again. To say Tsunade was furious with Jiraiya was a gross understatement. You and that old fool have no right, Jiraiya! She cried as she tried to land an infuriated blow, smashing a table that the white-haired man had substituted himself with. Calm down, would you? Stop acting like it's the end of the world. Jiraiya shouted back as he spun around a very sharp-looking table leg being used as an impromptu kunai. Don't tell me to calm down, bastard. Not after what you did, she screamed. You're blowing this way out of proportion, he shouted as he went out the open window. Get back here and suffer, she howled as she went after him. Jiraiya had never seen her this angry before. Which was saying something. He had always sort of liked her temper. It was weird, sure, but every man had their tastes and his had always been Tsunade, especially when she was acting hot-headed and angry. This was different though. He wasn't aroused at all at the burning eyes tracing his movements, or the way she jiggled. Alright, so that was a lie. He was very aroused right now, but it was simply outdone by how very terrified he was becoming the more she pursued him. In hindsight, he should have expected some sort of reaction like this. Their son, well, he was their world, of course. For Tsunade, though, it was more than that. Jiraiya loved the kid, he was his own flesh and blood, but already having shown the signs of an early prodigy, and the ability to use the legendary wood style, Naruto was far too important to be coddled by them. It sucked, but their world was unforgiving. Naruto would be something amazing, but they had to push him to achieve that. Jiraiya! Tsunade shouted as he managed to narrowly avoid being cornered by her. Tsunade, it's for the best. He tried to reason with her. For the best? Lie to yourself, fool, but not to me. The old monkey has been whispering in your ear about all this since Naruto made that little sapling grow in the training yard. You just can't bring yourself to stand up to him. The blonde hissed at her, now likely former lover. Jiraiya paused briefly at that. Did she really think that of him? That he couldn't stand up to their teacher over anything? A more worrisome question, was she actually right? No. No! I agreed with him after he made me see reason. Naruto is going to be the center point for the next generation Tsunade. He needs to be ready. Jiraiya argued. He needs a childhood. He's 5. You've gone off and betrothed him to that Uzumaki princess, and tossed him into the upper class in the academy, and he's just 5. She screamed, swinging another punch that nearly connected with his head only to freeze mid-swing. Jiraiya took a deep breath to calm himself as he watched Tsunade struggle briefly against the shadows that pinned her in place. 3 Nara clansmen hidden behind ANBU masks. He wasn't sure which impressed him more, that 3 were required to restrain her or that it only took those 3 to stop her. I know you're upset about it, but we graduated at 6, the same age that he will. He needs to be prepared for. Jiraiya tried reasoning with her until he fully locked eyes with her, and saw something he never thought he would. The honey-colored eyes he loved so much looked back at him with nothing but disgust and hatred. In this moment, she truly hated him. The realization that she actually, truly hated him almost caused him to miss her next words, but the snarl on her lips brought him back just in time to register what she was telling him. He's all I have left in this world, Jiraiya, and you and the old monkey are treating him like a weapon. Just like the elders did to my grandmother, and just like they planned to do for that little Uzumaki that you decided Naruto would marry without my input at all. He's 5 and he needs to be kept home and safe till he's older and strong enough to protect himself. Her voice had fallen from the outraged roar earlier to an indignant hiss. Something that hurt more than the white-hot fury she had come at him with earlier. Tsunade, I am trying to protect him by making sure he is ready, Jiraiya argued. Shut up, she snapped. Her voice had finally fallen lower even than the previous hiss, and now to a simple cold tone. Just shut up. I don't want you coming back around to the estate. I don't want you near my son either. She huffed as the shadows receded from below her. Finally free, and no longer murderous in her rage. That was the end of it. Tsunade simply rolled her shoulders once she was free and stalked off back home to await her son returning from the academy. His first day placed with the advanced class. All Jiraiya could do was watch her go. The umbu shifted awkwardly for a brief moment before flickering away. The Sannin sighed deeply as he leaned back against the wall and groaned. A part of him tried to convince himself that she would get over all this and things could go back to how they had been. They'd been really good for the last 7 years or so. That look in her eyes, though. He'd never seen something like that from her. It told him a different story. Things wouldn't blow over, she held grudges anyway, so the thought that this time she really was done with him caused an ache in his chest. Only worsened when the last of his team dropped down beside him with a blank look on her face. Like Tsunade, though, her eyes were different. Slitted golden orbs that he once felt such attraction toward now simply made him feel awkward. The knowing, mocking look he knew to be hiding behind the calm blank expression made it all the worse. Those eyes seemed to judge him as a fool, once again, and he hated it. Every bit of his being hated it. Even though he could never bring himself to hate their owners. Perhaps that was why he hated the judging look from them so much. He would never utter a word about how they hurt him. Jiraiya, the pale, exotic woman, said as she looked over at him. No change in expression, just a slight tilt of her head as she thought of her words. He decided he would preempt whatever venomous insults she planned to sling at him. He really didn't need it today. Can it, Orochimaru? I have enough shit to deal with. I already know what you are going to say. Stop being Sensei's dog. Think for yourself. You're being an asshole. Tell me, did I hit it on the head? He asked sarcastically. Orochimaru stared back at him, but Jiraiya could see just the slightest shift in her eyes. A change from mocking to disdain, maybe? She was always hard to read, especially for him. Slowly she shook her head, long black hair swaying slightly with the motion. She and Tsunade both truly were beauties. One the gorgeous princess, the other the exotic temptress. You are a pathetic idiot. I'll be getting more involved with Tsunade and Naruto-kun. I was going to offer trying to mend your relationship with her and not badmouth you to him, but I think they are better off away from you, she said without changing her expression in the slightest. Please, you wouldn't talk me up to the two of them if I paid you to. Plus, what makes you think you are so much better to be around them? After all, Naruto will never know his uncle thanks to you, Jiraiya replied. He hated himself the moment he said it. It was a low blow, and it made him wonder how did he get here from the little boy who had crushed after both of his teammates so terribly. Orochimaru couldn't quite force down the hurt look that leapt in her eyes from his words. Most would have missed it, but not Jiraiya. He was better trained to read people than most, but the only reason he caught it with her was because they had been close for literally their entire lives. Same orphanage, same academy class, same team, and after a lifetime of friendship all they had was bitterness and regret between them. It was a disturbing feeling. No, Jiraiya, she began, glaring into his eyes now. Face pinched so very slightly into that aristocratic scowl she had developed somehow despite being an urchin like him. You couldn't pay me too, but if you really think that is why I would have done it, then you really don't know a damn thing. She made to leave but paused before looking at him over the pale flesh of her exposed shoulder. Her eyes trailed him up and down, and she seemed to be thinking of something before turning to face him once more. This time the cold expression on her face was far from blank. He knew that face, the one saved for those that had somehow chipped through her icy heart enough to actually upset her. No easy feat. You ever bring up Nawaki as my fault like that again, I will ruin you in every way I can imagine. She didn't wait for a response before she turned and stalked away. The sway of her hips drawing his eye even now. Even though he hated himself for it. Jiraiya nearly whined out loud as one of the ANBU he knew to be assigned to the Hokage today dropped beside him and caught his attention. He just wanted to go sit in a bar and sulk for a while. Couldn't the world see that? He was sure Hiruzen could with his damned crystal ball. Lord Jiraiya, you are requested to meet with Lord Hokage and his advisors. They have much they wish to discuss with you about your son and the Senju clan, the ANBU said. They will need Tsunade to discuss anything with the Senju. I'm not stupid enough to poke her after all of this, Jiraiya said. The ANBU agent simply stared back silently, causing the Sannin to groan in frustration. Fine. All right, just give me a second and I'll be right there, he said while scowling up at the trees that covered the village. Understood, the ANBU said and flickered away to inform the Hokage that his former pupil would be arriving soon. Yeah, guess I will have to tell Sensei myself about the new situation with Tsunade. I hope Naruto is having a lot better day than I am, Jiraiya grumbled as he began to make his way to the Hokage tower. Much more sedately than the ANBU had earlier. Naruto was not in fact having a good day. It turns out, being advanced to the senior class from the entry class roughly 4 days into the academy year drew a lot of attention. Naruto loved attention, especially from his loved ones. This was different. These kids either saw him as the village prince and gawked at him in wonder, or thought he was a brat who didn't deserve to be there. Naruto agreed. He didn't want to be in this class. He was just starting to make some friends in his own class, and now he was with kids 4 to 6 years his elders. At least he knew they weren't dumb enough to try and pick a fight with him. Having parents as Sannin typically meant no one was balls enough to talk to him, let alone start a fight with him. Well, almost no one. Since she came to the village 2 years ago, Kushina Uzumaki had not been very pleased by her situation. Not only was she moved to a village away from her home, friends, and family, but also she was to be made the next Jinchuriki of the Nine-Tailed Fox. Not that anyone outside of the Anbu, elders, Hokage, and Senju clan were even aware of that fact, but she was also betrothed to a boy 5 years younger than her. 5. So, being told she was bound to marry what she had so very intelligently referred to as the royal toddler of Konoha, or simply the toddler, she had lashed out in frustration. As she couldn't lash out at the Senju clan, Mito, or the Hokage, that left one person. The toddler. The fact that several kids had tried to bully her, evidently only for her to beat them into pulp, made it all the easier. A lot of their classmates were horrified as Kushina laid into the little 5-year-old in their class about him not belonging there, and needing to go back to his babysitters. Naruto hadn't been happy, but over the last year of Kushina treating him rather poorly, he was accustomed to her name-calling. Eventually, she had left him alone, settling for scoffing every time he managed to prove exactly why it was that the Hokage and his father had wanted to elevate him to this class. Just like Kushina was advanced 2 years, Naruto had been advanced by 6. The day was long, and mostly annoying for the blonde boy. He had learned the academy-level jutsu and chakra control techniques from his parents already. He wondered if they knew he was going to be advanced so quickly. It would make sense. They were the ones that trained him after all. With the school day over, Naruto happily made his way home. His mother and even the Hokage had told him to make nice with Kushina as best as he could, but she flatly turned down his offer to walk home together. Her compound was close to the Senju estate on the outskirts of the village, on the mountain in the woods behind the heads of the Hokage. Still, he was a little happy she turned him down. She was so rude sometimes. When he got home, he was a little disappointed that neither of his parents were there. Orochimaru, his mother's friend, was though. The woman was always sweet to him. Sometimes more so than even his mom, like whenever she would sneak him candy or other treats when he wasn't supposed to have them. For some reason she and his father didn't get along though. They were always staring at each other or making fun of one another. Orochimaru took him out to the training ground after he ate something to fill his stomach till dinner. She was to handle his training till Tsunade returned home whenever she was done dealing with the Hokage and his advisors. Naruto was fine with that. He was more than happy to simply be getting to start working on his training once more with actual material. He wasn't ridiculously ahead of the advanced class members, the fact they were 5 to 7 years older than him not really mattering much in his mind if they would all graduate together. It seemed silly that the whole next 6 months would be nothing but review for him and his classmates as they fine-tuned their skills for graduation. Being able to really train here at the estate at least made sure he wasn't doing nothing. The idea of sitting around and doing nothing wasn't really fun for Naruto. Orochimaru seemed to agree as she decided to make him work on harder chakra exercises than normal, like surface walking on the Senju family pond while dodging a ball she had seemingly pulled out of nowhere. It felt a lot less like training and more like a game, but he wasn't about to complain. Plus, Orochimaru seemed to have as much fun tossing the ball at him as he did dodging it. She laughed or giggled every time it got close and seemed disappointed if she ever managed to hit him. Eventually though, even with his Senju body giving him a leg up in training programs like this, he needed to rest. He was a 5-year-old after all. Seeing him beginning to slip up in maintaining the surface walking technique, the snake Sannin called the session and snatched him up into her arms. The boy was confused by this but let her carry him while he asked her why she wanted to. Well, did you know I was the 3rd person to ever hold you when you were born? Before even your father, she said as they made their way leisurely toward the house. Really? Naruto asked, curious as to why she would want to hold someone else's baby. He'd seen a few when his mother had checked up on new kunoichi mothers. They looked mostly boring and loud. Not a combination he liked all that much. Yes, really? It wasn't long after your uncle passed away, she said softly as her eyes turned away from Naruto's face. My uncle? He asked. Yes, my student and your mother's little brother. You remind us all so much of him, it's shocking sometimes. He was killed on a mission not long before you were born and I was very sad. I think I was more sad than your mother was because she still had your father and you on the way. Orochimaru explained, though she kept it light for the child. After Nawaki had been killed, Orochimaru had spiraled. She lost herself and became a butcher on the battlefield. She'd already struggled a little because she had felt like Jiraiya had pushed her to the side to get into the Senju princess's panties. She cared for them both, even more so after she realized their relationship hadn't been totally based on their lust for one another. She'd always felt a little self-conscious of her unique appearance. Even if she was often called an exotic beauty, it always had to have exotic first, never simply just beauty. That was nothing compared to the loss of her prized student though. The one that her best friend had entrusted to her. Had Naruto not been born, she was certain Tsunade would have pushed her away, and she would have taken the offer to join Root when it was given to her. As it was, she was running the TNI department instead of R&D, but no one in her cells was an innocent, or not an enemy of some sort. She could sleep at night with that knowledge. She didn't have to give up a part of herself to the darkness like her sensei's beloved teammate Danzo appeared to have done. Naruto really had saved her, just by being born. She loved him for it. That was why she was on Tsunade's side in this whole debacle. Naruto might be a prodigy and possess the Mokuton, but he was a little boy and he knew that his advancement had nothing to do with his actual readiness and all to do with old men's greed. Orochimaru smiled as her darker thoughts slipped out of her head as the little blonde wrapped his small arms around her neck and embraced her. This precious child would grow into an amazing young man, and she couldn't wait to see what he would accomplish. She and Tsunade just needed to make sure he reached the point that he could have a chance to accomplish those things. The snake Sennin brought Naruto inside and he helped her set things up before even helping to make dinner. When Tsunade returned, Orochimaru almost giggled at seeing the weight slip off her friend's shoulders at the sight of her sister in all but blood and her own little boy working together in the kitchen to make a relative feast. Instead of giggling, she pitched her a bottle of sake, knowing the glass would just be a waste of time, and the 3 remaining residents of the Senju estate set about digging into their food happy as could be, even if Naruto was a bit confused on where his father was. Over the next few months, Naruto had settled into his new routine as best he could. He had been very upset when he found out his parents were no longer together, and that his father had gotten his own home close to the artisan district of Konoha. It was actually closer to the academy, but because his dad was so often taking part in missions outside Konoha because of the war, while Orochimaru and Tsunade's skills had given them more value within Konoha. That of course meant that Naruto rarely if ever got to see his father. In school, Kushina had largely continued to avoid him. She had gotten a shadow as far as he could tell in the shape of a blonde civilian girl that was neck and neck with her for Kunoichi of the Year. Naruto himself wasn't going to graduate as Rookie of the Year. He didn't have the strength to compete in a direct fight with the larger, stronger students yet. Despite that, his speed and technical skills were by far the best. That made sense as both his parents and Orochimaru all decided that if he was going to be graduating onto a genin team soon, he would be as well-rounded and skilled as he could be. Orochimaru especially took an interest in his training, and Naruto had even overheard her speaking with his mother. She wanted Orochimaru to apply for Jonin instructor again, but Orochimaru had flatly refused, saying she couldn't have another team, not after the last one. As far as Naruto was aware, that was the end of that discussion for good. As neither of them were going to be his sensei, they had upped what they wanted him to know even more. Even demanding Jiraiya began instructing Naruto in the most basics of sealing. He hadn't yet made much more than the practice seals yet, but Jiraiya seemed decently happy with his progress. His greatest progress had been with ninjutsu. All of his mentors knew he would eventually be a ninjutsu powerhouse. Even without his Mokuton, Naruto had an overly large pool of chakra to draw from, coupled with above-average control. It was only obvious to feed him ninjutsu to perform for eventual combat. By now he had managed to get started on elemental ninjutsu. Had he been staying the full length of time in the academy, it was no doubt Naruto would have a solid handle and mastery of his elements. But as it was, he only had the nature exercises for his earth and water jutsu completed. He was starting on actual jutsu, but beyond his instinctive ability to grow small trees or wooden objects without much control, he had little more than the basic academy jutsu and a very basic healing palm variant. Right now, though, that wasn't much of an issue. The tests for graduation were easily passed for him. So he now sat with his classmates' hitai tied around his neck at the suggestion of Orochimaru. Their instructor, someone he hardly recalled, stepped into the room finally and smiled at the collection of new genins sat before her. I just want to say that it has been an honor to teach all of you in this advanced graduation class. All of you have exceeded my expectations, and while I haven't gotten to teach you for very long, I want you to know I am proud of each and every one of you. Now I am going to be calling out the teams," she said, getting the kids to puff out their chests in pride and grin at the thought of their future team. Naruto listened intently, excited to hear his name called. Several went by. Kushina was called for her team with some Inuzuka and Shibi Abirame under Tsukumo Hataki. Naruto had heard that name before. His mother had made sure he was very aware of the various clans within and without Konoha that were important. The Hataki were small and practically extinct, but they were some of the most legendary in the Clan Wars era. A handful more teams were called before Naruto finally heard his name. "Naruto Senju, Minako Namikaze, and Issei Kurama, your sensei will be O Lord Jiraiya," the instructor said. Naruto's teammates both became very excited at the prospect of being taught by a Sannin. For different reasons, of course. The blonde girl, Minako, saw Jiraiya much like herself. An orphan making her way by the skin of her teeth. Issei was the oldest member of the class and more excited with the prospect of Jiraiya's other source of fame. They didn't have to wait long before Jiraiya burst into the room in a cloud of smoke on top of a giant toad. In a single instant, all three children were wrapped up in the toad's tongue and they once more vanished in a poof of smoke, stunning the instructor and remaining students. In an empty training ground, Jiraiya, a giant blue and purple toad, and three very ruffled and shaken kids appeared. The Sannin grinned down at the students. Normally, a Jonin instructor would perform a test to see if they were ready. Jiraiya had carefully selected each of his students, and knew already he would pass them. Instead, he planned on simply doing introductions and jumping right in on training teamwork. With a jump start, maybe they could move on to something actually exciting. With a tap on the head from its summoner, the toad launched the three students out of its grip and vanished away in smoke. Naruto and Minako both rolled to their feet without too much of an issue, while Issei stumbled and slowly rose to his feet again. Jiraiya sized them up. Naruto, despite being the youngest, was clearly the least rattled by Jiraiya's antics. He had grown up with toads, slugs, and snakes around the house talking to him, and it wasn't even the first time he had been wrapped up in a summon's oversized tongue. Minako wasn't too disturbed, though the mix of a blush and green tint on her face showed that she wasn't very pleased by the method of her being transported by Jiraiya in such a way. Issei was the roughest for wear. The sticky fluid left on his shirt from the transport had collected dirt and grass all over him. He looked even more green around the gills than Minako. Cheeks bulged slightly like he was fighting back vomit. "Well, have a seat, kids, and let's introduce ourselves to one another," Jiraiya said. His son nodded and sat while paying attention to his father intently. Similarly, Minako followed her younger teammates led while Issei flopped onto the ground with a sigh. Jiraiya could already tell he was going to get along with the brunette boy. He reminded him more of himself at that age than his own son. Jiraiya refused to even entertain the possible thought, tickling in his mind as he glanced at the Kurama clan boy. "So, you know I'm going to be your sensei, Jiraiya of the Sannin, in case you hadn't heard any of my extraordinary legends. I look forward to teaching all of you. I love the village and shapely ripe fruit, and dream of a peaceful world," he said with a smile, getting interested looks from each of the kids. Even Naruto seemed to be learning things about his father he didn't know, though he didn't know his dad liked fruit so much. Alternatively, Minako looked shocked and embarrassed while Issei nodded vigorously to his new sensei's words. "Alright, we'll start with you. Include your name, age, a dream, and some things you like or dislike." Jiraiya pointed at Issei. I'm Issei Kurama. I'm 12, almost 13, and I want to become clan head and expand it by taking several wives and having a lot of kids. I like fresh, ripe, shapely fruit too, and I hate pretty boys that squander their gifts," Issei said with a grin. Jiraiya nodded sagely at his student's words as if he had said some great and wonderful truth. "I'm Minako Namikaze. I'm 10 and I want to become the first female Hokage. I want to also become a sealing mistress like Lady Mito was in her day. I like training and reading heroic stories." Minako muttered through her blush, embarrassed, at the realization that both her sensei and idol, and her fellow teammate were evidently irredeemable perverts. "I'm Naruto Senju. I just turned 6 a while ago. I want to become super strong like my great-grandpa Hashirama and help bring an end to the war. I like fruit too. Strawberries are my favorite, especially when Orochimaru lets me eat them with sugar when my mom isn't home," Naruto said. Minako was smiling brightly at the innocent boy with them. She would have been a bit worried about him being on the team if she hadn't been in the same class as him for the last 6 months. She wasn't worried about him physically, but maybe she needed to worry about the influence her new sensei and teammate would have on the boy. "Now that that's out of the way, I have to say your introductions were all useless to making you a good team," Jiraiya said with a sigh as if he was disappointed. "What do you mean, sensei?" Issei asked. He had done exactly as they had been told, right? "I told you to include your name, age, and all that other stuff because that will help you get along. Not one of you told the others what their skills were or what their weaknesses were. I want you all to understand right from the start here, this isn't the place to chat and waste time. There is still a war going on. Sure, it's winding down with us on top, but only at the cost of thousands of lives, including our closest allies, the Uzumaki. Your classmate is the last of her people, and I want to make sure that none of you suffer a similar fate. That means your focus as shinobi and kunoichi must always be on the danger our lifestyle brings." Jiraiya let that sink in for a moment. "But you didn't tell us your strengths or weaknesses either," Naruto pointed out to his father, a little annoyed that he seemed to be holding them to a different standard. "That's because to be where I am today I had to have at least passing skill at every facet of shinobi life and excel at plenty as well. None of you are to that point. You have to know your teammates' strengths and weaknesses so that you can all fill in for one another, alright?" Jiraiya said. Slowly the three children began to nod as they came to understand. Good, now let's try this again, starting with you. He pointed to Issei once more. I'm Issei Kurama, 12, I want to build a big family with several wives. My best skill is genjutsu. I don't have my family's Kekkei Genkai because it is so rare, but I am still good at genjutsu. My taijutsu and ninjutsu suck though. I don't have very much chakra to work with either, so I get tired easily, but I have pretty good control. Issei explained. Well done, kid. Don't worry, the whole reason you guys are assigned to Jonin instructors as genin is so that we can shape you up to be solid, well-rounded shinobi. I have plenty of exercises to help you work on bettering what you're bad at and perfecting what you're good at, Jiraiya said before motioning to Minako. Minako Namikaze 10. I like reading and training and want to become Hokage. I'm really fast and flexible. I also have started on seals. I can even make a sealing scroll to replace my backpack. I did it the last couple of weeks of the academy. I guess I don't have a lot of stamina and I don't hit as hard as I would if I had more muscle, Minako said, struggling a bit with openly admitting her weaknesses. That was good actually in Jiraiya's mind. She didn't seem the prideful type, so her having difficulty admitting them meant she wanted to change them badly. She would be easy to set on the right path to grow. Good, we'll work on all of that, and I'm a certified sealing master, so I will be glad to help you hone that skill especially. Now, last but not least, Naruto, Jiraiya said. I'm Naruto Senju. I'm 6 and I want to become a strong shinobi for my family. I still like fruit and especially strawberries. I can do a little elemental jutsu already. Earth and water style. I don't have them mastered. I can do a really easy healing jutsu too. I have a lot of chakra and OK control, so I have a lot to use for ninjutsu. I'm smaller than everyone else though, and whenever we do taijutsu training it's hard when everyone is bigger and stronger, Naruto said. His voice was abnormally clear and intelligent for his age, but he still tilted his head and tapped his chin in a thoughtful way like a little boy would, making Jiraiya chuckle at his son's antics and Minako giggle softly at the cute sight. Especially when he brought fruit up once again. That's a great place to start with all of you. Now, today we'll run through what will normally be our warm-up routine and get it down properly before I dismiss you. Tomorrow we'll meet here at 7:30 in the morning, so don't be late. Especially you, Naruto, you have no excuse since I know where you will be sleeping at, Jiraiya joked, getting some laughter from his students as they stood up and began the stretches and light exercises they planned to use in their daily routine. Tsunade was conflicted over the fact that her ex-lover was Naruto's sensei. She didn't absolutely hate Jiraiya, but after his decisions regarding Naruto's early entry and graduation, as well as some of the odd things he said revolving around toads and prophecy, she could barely stand to be around him. He was Naruto's father though, and she knew that Jiraiya truly did love his son and in his own way wanted the best for him. Her son being on his team meant he would be able to spend more time with his father, which had become especially rare over the last year. It also meant that one of the most powerful shinobi Konoha had at its disposal would be watching over him, and that relieved her. It also worried her because she knew Jiraiya better than anyone in the world did. He was reckless, uniquely arrogant, and far too fond of the sink or swim approach. However, he wasn't a terrible teacher whenever he focused on actually teaching. His focus on using a handful of basic skills to ridiculous effect in action was something she thought was ingenious. Jiraiya himself didn't have that many jutsu in his arsenal, especially if you removed his sealing and summons. What he did have was extremely versatile, and if he could pass that on to his students, or more importantly for Tsunade, Naruto, then Naruto would take it to another level. Her son, as much as she tried to shield him, really was a prodigy, and if he could take Jiraiya's teachings to heart, he could possibly even surpass her grandfather. That all benign said, if that shitty lecher did anything to turn her innocent and sweet little boy into something in his image. She swore to herself if Naruto ever came to her talking about women's figures and all that other perverted trash his father drooled after, she would beat her fellow Sannin to a pulp and let Orochimaru toy with his remains. Letting out a sigh so that she didn't snap the wooden spoon she was using to make dinner, Tsunade calmed down from her mental rant. Tonight was special. Naruto was on a team now, and so was little Kushina Uzumaki. Tsunade had sent Naruto over to get the girl to come eat dinner with them. The Senju woman knew that Kushina was still unhappy about the situation with being arranged to marry Naruto. She couldn't blame her. There had been several attempts to betroth her to this noble, or this clan heir, or that shinobi. Thankfully, her mother had been around back then to kindly tell the Hokage and his advisors to step off a cliff and die. People wondered where it was she got her temper, and it was undoubtedly from her mother. That all being said, there wasn't too much that could be done about it now. Sensei and his teammates saw Naruto as the second coming of Hashirama simply because of his Mokuton abilities, and Kushina as the same for Mito, simply because of her special chakra, and now the fact she was Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. They were dead set on marrying the two together the moment Naruto was 16. After it all was said and done, Naruto and Kushina would eventually be married. They needed to get along, and Tsunade planned on doing her best to make that happen. Not to mention, she had no doubt the poor girl was incredibly lonely in the compound that Mito had left her. After a glance at the clock, Tsunade felt her stomach sink. Naruto and Kushina should have been back. Making a shadow clone, she sent it to go get them and carry them back. She hoped they weren't fighting or something. Kami knows she just wanted them to get along and make the best of their situation. When the clone popped a short time later, Tsunade got the memory of the kicked-in door to Kushina's home and the overturned furniture. Someone had seemingly kidnapped Kushina and her baby too. She was gone in a shunshin before the spoon she'd been holding hit the floor. Kushina didn't cry. Not a single tear, since the Kumonin had grabbed her and tied her up. A jonin and pair of Takujo had kicked her door down just after sunset, and she hadn't had a chance. She still tried to run for it. Now they were leading her along, tied up with her chakra sealed as if she was a misbehaved dog. She wanted to cry but refused. The terrible thoughts of what would happen to her when they got back to Kumo made her legs feel like jello and her stomach ache in fear. The same people that had a hand in her homeland's destruction and the massacre of her family were pulling her along like a slave. Another addition to her grief was that she didn't think anyone was coming for her. She didn't have any real friends or loved ones. She was technically related to the Senju, but she treated little Naruto badly because someone had decided she had to marry him. She suddenly felt a little bad about blaming him for that. He didn't make that decision. The few she considered her friends in the village weren't very close. Tsum and Shibi were both gone back to their own homes and had no reason to even know she was being taken. Mikoto was a couple years older than her, and they had gotten along well enough, but the Uchiha largely kept to themselves outside of police duties, so like the others, she had no reason to suspect her to stumble upon what had happened. The thought that it could be until the next day that she was even discovered missing, and only because she didn't show up for training, killed almost all of the hope she had left. Almost. She wasn't sure why. Maybe just out of desperation or wishful thinking that anyone from Konoha would find it, she began plucking bundles of her hair out and dropping it to leave a trail. She prayed to the kami it would help. Even as the three Kumo-nin seemed to become relaxed and confident, they had made plenty of distance from the village as the moon rose high in the sky, marking it around midnight. They shared some drinks and roughly pushed her onto the ground for a brief break while they quickly ran through a bottle of sake. Suicide mission, ha! Look at us now. We'll get that part in for sure when we hand deliver this little whirlpool cunt to the Reikage himself, one of the Takujos said. As long as we don't end up in the bingo book as missing Nin, I'm happy, the leader said as he pulled the bottle from under his vest, roughly handling it, and took a deep swallow of the bitter liquid. The fact that the men had decided to get drunk made her even more frightened after recalling some of her kunoichi classes at the academy. Most had focused on what to do if captured and what to expect. The thought nearly killed her last hope, but the fact they had decided to get drunk before crossing the border of the Land of Fire actually bolstered it a bit. Drunk men made mistakes, and that gave her hope. That tiniest sliver of hope that someone would save her was all that kept the tears at bay. Naruto had seen the caved-in front door of Kushina's house, and like any normal person knew immediately that she was in trouble. Unlike a normal 6-year-old though, instead of running for help he did what his mother would refer to as reckless or stupid. He checked out the house quietly, and easily realized she had been taken by someone. He looked for any kind of sign or trail when something caught his eye. Strands of red hair. Easily picked up in the light from the full moon tonight. Naruto collected the hair and frowned. He hoped it was enough of a trail for him to follow. As he raced through the forest, slow enough that he could keep track of the patch, but still fast enough to gain on them, he soon heard another figure approaching much faster than him, and assumed it to be one of the kidnappers. Drawing a kunai, he locked blades with his attacker only for his golden eyes to widen as he stared into the shocked blues of his own teammate Minako. The girls seemed as surprised as him to see him, and both slowly stepped back before putting away their weapons. "Naruto? What are you doing here?" she asked. Naruto was silent for a moment, looking at the older girl before he noticed the hand clasping several red hairs that she had clearly picked up on the trail as well. "You came to save her too?" he asked as he turned to look at the trail he was planning to follow. "Yeah, I've always been jealous of her hair. I thought it was beautiful," Minako replied as she glanced at her hand. "It is pretty. She's leaving a trail to follow, so we have to go help her," Naruto said as he moved to step forward. "Wait," Minako said, grabbing his shoulder before he could jump away. "Don't try to stop me, I'm a genin same as you. I can fight, maybe even better than you can," he said with a frown. "I'm not. We will go save her, it's just someone should go get help. The Hokage or someone to tell them where we are and lead them here," Minako said. Naruto was quiet for a moment. She was right, Whoever kidnapped Kushina was likely to be more than he could handle alone. That being said, as much as Kushina seemed to dislike him, he did care about her. She was alone, her clan was gone, and she was forced to do a lot of things she wanted no part in, like eventually marrying him. He felt bad for her, and perhaps because he wanted to show her that she had people that cared for her here in Konoha, he wanted to be there to help her. Besides, there was a very good reason why out of the two of them Naruto was better suited for going after the kidnappers. You should go get help. You're faster than me and can bring backup sooner, Naruto said. Minako hesitated for only a moment before nodding and taking off back toward the village to get help. Naruto watched her leave before turning and leaping off into the woods himself to save his fiancée. It didn't take long to find them. It was odd, the men had vests showing they were all at least Chunin, though he imagined they were higher ranks than that, given they had infiltrated this deep into the land of fire. They hadn't gone into the actual village, taking advantage of the fact that the Uzumaki property was just outside the actual settlement. Naruto could practically smell the alcohol on them as they trudged through the forest, yanking roughly on the leash they had tied to the red-headed girl. Naruto wasn't hateful, but seeing a fellow citizen of Konoha being led along like a dog sparked something in him, and his honey gold eyes grew cold and serious. An expression no child of 6 should be able to make came onto his face, and he began his work. For Kushina, hours had passed and still no one had come. That sliver of hope in her heart had begun to wither and die. She was exhausted and simply stumbled on behind the Jonin, pulling her leash. She didn't even hear the rearmost shinobi of the group collapse as a kunai embedded itself into his neck. The surprise of the last two, along with their slightly dulled reactions, caused the second Tokujo to only narrowly avoid a half-dozen shuriken aimed at him. While he managed to block them, he hadn't anticipated the kunai following close behind that caught him in the eye and caused him to fall back, tripping over Kushina and startling her as he fell. The Kumo nin had managed to survive, just barely, but he was screaming bloody murder as his eye bled around the blade stuck in his skull. The last member of the group, the Jonin, nearly tore Kushina's arm from its socket as he yanked her up into his arms and slowly backed up to one of the oversized trees of fire country with a kunai of his own against her throat. Kushina, for her part, fought back tears. Not sad ones or even frightened ones. Her tears were nothing but happiness. Pure joy, because she had been wrong. Someone came for her. Listen up. Show yourself and we can negotiate, otherwise I'll slit her throat. I mean, I know I'm dead if I kill her, but if you don't come out here, all this is for nothing, and I promise I got less to lose than you do, treehugger. The Jonin bellowed out into the darkness. Slowly his comrade had stopped screaming, instead whimpering at the wound and trying to slowly remove the kunai without causing more damage than he had already suffered. The Jonin continued to scan the dark forest looking for his enemies. They weren't ahead of him, not to the sides or rear anymore, that only left. Just as he turned his head upward, only catching the glittering gold orbs of an evil-looking child, he felt something stab him through the back at an upward angle. The odd pain spread so wide and so quickly he couldn't even scream. Instead, only a choked gargling sound escaped, followed by blood slipping from his lips as he was lifted up off the ground a few inches. As his body failed him and his world slid into darkness, he dropped the girl who would have gotten him his life in Kumo back if only he had been able to get her to Kumo. He then died shortly afterward, the amount of damage done to his body from an entire tree branch impaling and expanding through his chest and throat was completely catastrophic. Kushina yelped as she fell, scuffing her arms and legs. She didn't waste any time though. Pushing through her exhaustion, she snatched up the kunai that had been held against her neck just a moment before and began furiously working at freeing her hands. She kept glancing up at the body of the Kumo nin suspended up into the air by a tree branch and his final remaining comrade. The last Tokujo had finally removed the kunai from his face and had begun to step toward Kushina. He was careful to do his best in avoiding coming too close to any of the trees, as Konoha seemed to have been hiding a secret during this war. "Come here, you little bitch," he growled, reaching for her just as she got free. Kushina screamed at the man as she finally got free and slashed up at the man with her kunai, taking the small finger on his left hand, ripping another scream from his mouth. "You fucking Uzumaki cunt! I'll kill you!" He howled as he twisted to plunge his kunai down into her, only for Naruto to land on his back and drive a kunai into the junction of his neck and shoulder. As the man reached up toward Naruto to pull him off or cut him, Kushina launched forward and embedded the kunai in her hands into his chest, causing him to finally collapse onto the forest floor. Both children scrambled away from the man with kunai at the ready, but thankfully the fight was over as they both collapsed to the ground exhausted. Kushina glanced over at the boy who had saved her and was a bit shocked at what she saw. Guilt slipped into her heart as she saw the blood splattered on Naruto's hands and face from his last kill. She was about to say something when he held up a hand. Looking at it, she saw a few strands of red hair held between his fingers and realized he had actually used her hair to track him down. Your hair is very shiny and pretty, Kushina. It was easy to find with the moonlight, he said with a small tired smile. Naruto, she said timidly. You killed those men for me. You came to rescue me, but she stopped herself, not wanting to admit being at fault for how she had treated him in the past. Of course I did. No one deserves that, he said simply. The words caused Kushin to nod and smile slightly. He really was a kind boy, even if he was capable of killing at so young. What about that? Kushina asked as she looked back up toward the Kumo-nin suspended by the new branch sticking into his back and out his front. That's why the Hokage and my dad made sure we were betrothed. Mom says that the Hokage and his over-the-hill friends all look at me as the second coming of my great-grandpa. My great-grandma was Mito, he explained. And I'm supposed to be the new Mito, Kushina said with a nod. I knew you were a hotshot Senju and the heir or whatever, but I didn't realize you had the actual Mokuton. I've never used it like that before. I used the basic hand signs for growing my trees at home but channeled more chakra into it, and I guess just made it sharp, Naruto said sheepishly. Well, it worked, Kushina said. Yeah, Naruto said, but started to grow pale as he turned his head back toward the woods. What is it? More Kumo-nin? Kushina asked, tightening her grip on her kunai. No, it's Naruto began only for Tsunade and Minako to come barreling into the clearing before freezing as they looked around at the 3 corpses and 2 bloody and tired children. Following right behind the mother and small but very fast blonde girl came the Hokage, Jiraiya, Orochimaru, and a half-dozen ANBU. The whole group paused briefly at the sight before them before the ANBU flickered into the trees to secure the perimeter. The rest checked the bodies and 2 kids over for any injuries. After running a quick diagnostic, Tsunade had snatched both kids into her arms and strode past the Hokage. Hiruzen watched her go with a sad expression. He hated when children their age were exposed to the realities of their world so soon, but it was better that they knew what they would face as shinobi of Konoha. He would be having Jiraiya's Team 7 and Tsukumo's Team 4 come to his office tomorrow. All 3 children, Minako included, would need to tell him their sides of the story, and it was best their teammates get some picture of what they would be going up against once they began missions. What he needed to worry about now was how 3 enemy shinobi bypassed the Land of Fire's border and Konoha's outer perimeter without being detected. For all 3 to be killed by 2 fresh genin, one of whom was a 6-year-old, meant they were mediocre shinobi at best, so Hiruzen now had to dig for a possible rat in his ranks. His night would just be getting started while for the likes of little Naruto, Kushina, and Minako a long ordeal was finally drawing to a close. It didn't bode well for their careers. Hiruzen was sure of it. Genin less than a day and already fighting men who had been shinobi longer than they had been alive. The Hokage just hoped that he and his jonin could properly prepare them for the challenges they would have to face. Konoha Gates. Team 7 was starting out on their first mission beyond the walls. They'd only been a team for a few weeks, but still, Jiraiya had to say his little genin were more than ready for this. They were excited at the moment, more than ready to put any thought of their tedious teamwork training behind them. That's all they had done since their meeting at the Hokage Tower a few weeks ago. That had Jiraiya frowning. Not so much the conversation within the tower. His students and his son's little fiancée had handled themselves extraordinarily well in the debriefing held by the Hokage. Jiraiya had been smirking proudly for his son's abilities the entire time. He was making so much progress not only as a shinobi in general, but especially with his unique Kekkei Genkai. Jiraiya just wished Tsunade could see it the same way. All his former lover saw was that her son and eventual daughter-in-law were needlessly put into harm's way because Konoha's lack of security had made them easy pickings. Especially Kushina. She even scolded Jiraiya and their old sensei for filling Naruto's head with what she dubbed ridiculous notions of heroics. That was totally unfair. True, Jiraiya and Hiruzen both had impressed upon Naruto whenever possible that because of his heritage and bloodline ability he would be extremely important for the village's future success, whether during war or peace times. It wasn't like they had claimed he was some savior of the world or anything. Jiraiya hadn't told anyone the prophecy the Elder Toad had given him after all. He was hesitant to label his son with the role in the first place. After all, some of that prophecy was pretty rough on the foretold hero. It also hinted at the hero being not quite what Jiraiya saw as an ideal savior of the world. Talking about being a cruel monster to their enemies without mercy or kindness for them. He couldn't picture his little boy like that. Sure, he knew Naruto would grow to be an excellent shinobi capable of destroying his enemies if need be, but truly callous to those who stood against him? He didn't want that for his boy. He wanted him to grow into his ideal man and help the world. All of the world, whether he was the true child of prophecy or not. Watching the backs of his students as they walked in the formation he had drilled in them for the last few weeks, Jiraiya's mind again swept back to what had really angered him in the tower. After they had all gone, Jiraiya had left one of his smallest toads nearby. Sure, it was wrong to spy on the old man, but this event concerned his son, his family, and Jiraiya was many things, but protective of his family was paramount among them. He knew Hiruzen had more of an idea on who exactly fucked up to let those 3 idiots into the village perimeter in the first place. He couldn't say he was surprised by who it was. That didn't make him any less pissed off. If anything, the way the whole situation was handled infuriated him, but he wasn't dumb enough to bring it up to Tsunade or Orochimaru. The 2 of them would be leading a damned coup by the end of the week if they knew the truth. Flashback. The toad remained invisible despite hiding in the thin crevice between the file cabinet and the wall. It didn't have to wait long for the next person set to meet with the Hokage to enter. A man in many bandages with one arm and a walking stick. He was at the edge of transitioning from late middle age to old, and yet he carried himself with a menace only the most veteran and deadly of shinobi possessed. The young spy toad felt concerned by his very presence. "You asked to see me, Hiruzen?" The man asked, only to suddenly on his back with the Hokage's sandal pressing down on his throat. "You had better come up with excuses quickly, Danzo, or I will end you right here and now," Hiruzen snarled. Again the young toad was concerned, or more like terrified. He had encountered the 3rd Hokage several times before, giving information that Jiraiya had him scrounge up to the Hokage directly. The older man had always been kind and friendly to him. Sometimes he was very serious, but never had the toad seen Lord Third so openly enraged and hostile. Hiruzen, Danzo croaked out from under the foot. "Don't be a fool. If I die, my root will all go rogue and Konoha will burn." The foot pressed harder onto the cripple's throat, and the Hokage's eyes practically glowed with rage. "You truly think now would be a good time to threaten me, Danzo? When you are at my mercy?" Hiruzen all but roared. Thankfully the privacy seals were in place to prevent anyone from hearing the interaction, save for one very inconspicuous toad. "It's the start of our discussion." Danzo managed to get out. Hiruzen let up just enough for his old comrade to speak. "An opening move in negotiations. You cannot kill me without damaging the village irreparably. I cannot kill you without turning the village against me as a whole. Have you forgotten that this is how shinobi enter negotiations? From a position of mutually assured destruction. Have you grown that soft behind that desk, Hiruzen?" Danzo asked while seeming to ignore the fact he was literally underfoot of the 3rd Hokage. Hiruzen glared down at Danzo and pressed down once more. It would be so easy to terminate the scum now and save himself the headache. The problem was, he had no doubt that Danzo spoke truly, and even if he didn't they would likely lose the root forces. And at this stage in the war, even with their enemies in the state they were, Hiruzen needed root to keep the dominance that Konoha had achieved thanks to its lost allies in the land of eddies. Slowly the Hokage released Danzo and returned to his seat. The crippled man climbed back to his feet and rubbed his throat with his hand. He had forgotten how emotional Hiruzen could be. Another reason why he made for such a poor Hokage. "Now can we speak like adults?" Danzo asked. "Yes. You will speak, and you will tell me exactly what the hell it was you hoped to gain by having 3 Kumonins slip into Konoha and capture one of our most important citizens the literal day she joined our shinobi forces?" Hiruzen growled. "Well, first of all, if it became known you let a Konoha citizen be kidnapped from Konoha itself, especially Kushina, then you would lose a lot of your support with the people of the village and the daimyo's court. I could have made an opportunity of that, I think," Danzo said with a thoughtful tone, getting Hiruzen to grind his teeth at the audacity of his supposed advisor. "But that was always just a happy addition to what I really wanted. It was simple. Another mile and the group would have been picked up by a unit of my root waiting for them. I leaked the entry to Kumo hoping they would send actually worthwhile shinobi to be captured, but they played things smarter than I expected and sent a team of mediocre shinobi they had pretty much cut ties with already. I hope to gain leverage over Kumo with them. It would have helped the village in negotiating demands at the end of this war," Danzo explained. Hiruzen stared at Danzo for a time with narrowed eyes. He knew there was far more to it than that. Like the fact Kushina would then be solely in Danzo's hands then and not in Hiruzen's. There was also the fact that it would compile on the fact the whole situation would look like a failure on Hiruzen's part, but it was Danzo's private force that prevented the loss of such an asset to Kumo. "I never could have planned for your own little project to step into the way though. I have to commend you, Hiruzen. Developing the next Hashirama in such a way that he more resembles Tobirama-sensei is a stroke of genius. You won't have to worry about my interference in that regard anytime soon. I underestimated your resolve, but in developing that weapon you have proven, at least a little, why it is Tobirama-sensei selected you," Danzo said with the traces of a grin on his lips. Hiruzen sighed almost sadly. "You will never understand the reasons why Tobirama-sensei selected me. I don't think you have the capability to really ever get it." Danzo's small smile transformed into a deep scowl. Hiruzen's softness reared its head even now, even while he was complimenting the ruthlessness a Hokage required for success. If that's all, Danzo said as he began to turn around. Danzo, after this warrior route will begin disbanding and integrating back into our forces. Those that can't will be sent on suicide missions for the good of Konoha, Hiruzen said, causing the man to pause. For the good of Konoha. As you say, Hiruzen, Danzo said. He was getting a trace amount of what he wanted from Hiruzen. A willingness to enforce his will on his subordinates, but he disliked that it was himself that Hiruzen decided to do so with. Especially in this way. One last thing, Danzo. You will respect me. You will refer to me properly as Lord Hokage, Hiruzen commanded with steel in his voice. Danzo was quiet for a moment before he turned once again and bowed slightly to his old teammate. As you command, Lord Hokage. The words were bitten out, but Hiruzen felt he got his message across. He might not be able to afford a fight with Root at the moment. But when the current war ended, that was a different story. That time was soon approaching as well. Neither man noticed the tiny toad slip out when the silencing seal barrier dropped and the door opened. Soon the little creature was back informing Jiraiya of all that had occurred. End flashback. The entire situation infuriated Jiraiya, but he trusted his sensei to do what needed to be done. If he felt that the right move was currently to let Danzo live and continue his operation, then he didn't doubt that he had his reasons. Hiruzen wasn't called the professor for nothing. The man was the smartest person Jiraiya had ever known. Plus, no matter how soft and peaceful he knew Danzo thought him to be, Jiraiya knew that Hiruzen could be extremely ruthless when he had to be. One didn't live as long as they did in the life of a shinobi without being a tough and cunning bastard. Sensei, are you alright? A young voice asked, pulling him back into the moment. Just fine. Just thinking about some things. Still odd having you call me sensei, Jiraiya said as he looked over to his son. The boy blinked back at him for a moment before running up back to his position in their formation. Jiraiya only sighed. It was hard to talk to his boy sometimes. He was so young, and in some ways still just a little boy. Other times he was extremely mature, and he often sat and discussed strategy and shinobi topics with his teammates. Jiraiya typically felt jealous of Tsunade's relationship with Naruto. The two just clicked. Jiraiya had trouble just sitting and talking to either one, struggling to find common ground at times, while Tsunade and Naruto didn't even seem to need to talk. Just be with one another, and they were happy. Hiruzen had said to give it time, and he would find his rhythm with the kid. He wasn't so sure though. He hoped as he grew up though they would find something to really bond over. At least the three genin were getting along. Naruto was somehow the leader of the team. Despite being 7 years younger than their oldest member, both Minako and Issei had fallen into following his lead. He had an idea that it likely stemmed from what Teams 7 and 4 had been told by the Hokage about what had happened with the Kumonin. Hiruzen had been right that debriefing the teams together like that served as an excellent bonding experience, even with the kids that hadn't been there. The reveal of Naruto's Kekkai Genkai to their team in full and explanation of how this likely wouldn't be the last time Naruto or Kushina would be targeted had somehow pulled a protective nature out of the other kids. It was something to see the professor work his magic. Tsunade and Orochimaru weren't especially pleased. Orochimaru hadn't said anything, so he had trouble being sure, but she agreed with Tsunade 9 times out of 10 on this sort of thing, and all the blonde woman had to say was that their sensei was as manipulative as ever. Jiraiya agreed, though he thought it was even more so than when they were kids. Still, unlike Tsunade, he was fine with that. Hiruzen didn't manipulate anyone for selfish reasons. Everything he did was for the good of the village, and Hiruzen never took advantage of his subordinates like the Kage of other villages did at times. The thought of a cackling old man in the Hokage hat rubbing his hands together like some sort of cartoon villain was as much of a joke as the thought of Hiruzen in a dress. Actually, no, that second one was a bit scary. The following weeks Jiraiya hadn't really had to do much to implant the teamwork and conditioning in his team. While Naruto had somehow come out as the leader, Issei as the oldest was definitely the one intent on protecting his teammates the most. The kid was easily the weakest on the team, which wasn't to say he didn't have skill, he just struggled to match with the genius of Naruto and Minako. The similarities between himself and Issei mounted every day. Matched up with two genius teammates, and considered a goofball lecher at best or an idiot loser more often than not. Like himself though, the kid had spirit, and Jiraiya adored that. He could use that too. The boy's spirit and his new resolve to protect his teammates, as best he could, meant that he'd be relatively easy to push into training. That he definitely looked forward to. On the flip side of that coin was Minako. As promised, he had shown her a bit of his sealing jutsu. The brat had understood and copied it in hours, and she had begun developing alterations within a day. She was something else really. It kind of frightened him a little bit really. The thought brushed on his mind of a couple years down the line of not having anything left to teach her and Naruto if they just absorbed everything so easily. It was a silly thought, but the speed at which they grew really did startle him. It was after all why they were headed out on a mission beyond the safety of Konoha already. Their objective was as simple as it was vital. They were carrying a cargo of 7 sealing scrolls filled with supplies for the central hub outpost in Sector 15 of the Land of Fire's defensive network. This meant they were going to a big fort placed just outside of the town of Kurizaki to deliver it. The supplies would be distributed from there. The scrolls they carried had everything from weaponry, ink, and medical supplies to simple paper. Most items were purchased directly from the local town through the fort's stipend, however some things could only form from Konoha itself. That was why the job was so important but could be left to the care of genin. Not that Konoha had much choice in the matter. Even now in the waning moments of the Second Shinobi World War, Konoha was spread far too thin to spare anyone higher than a fresh chunin for that, and with a need to bolster the village security after the recent incident, even the fresh chunin were suddenly unavailable. As they made their way down the road, however, the team came to a stop at the sight of several carts strewn about, and obvious signs of struggle and fighting. As this was one of the Land of Fire's main roads moving from the capital out to the large trade villages near the border, it was usually well guarded by samurai and traditional army, even sometimes shinobi. The war had stretched even road guards thin though. Shinobi didn't take part in every battle, and for every conflict where 10 shinobi died in the elemental nations, easily 100 normal soldiers found their deaths as well. A trade caravan? Minako thought out loud. Looks like it. Looks like bandits hit it too, Issei said worriedly. The blood is fresh. It couldn't have been that long ago that this happened, Naruto added in his thoughts. Very good, Naruto. You're perceptive as usual, Jiraiya praised. His mind set to work trying to figure the best course of action before coming to a conclusion that was best in the long run even if it could be dangerous now. Time for his favorite teaching method. Sink or swim. Shinobi Edition. Alright kids. We have come across a trade caravan no doubt originally intended for either the capital or for Konoha. It's been ransacked by bandits, and the traders have seemingly been kidnapped as well. Nearly all of the supplies have been taken, and the wagons that were too damaged to be stolen were simply left behind after being looted. So, what do you think? He asked them. The 3 genin exchanged looks. They each realized that they had just stepped into an impromptu test from their sensei. He clearly wanted them to factor in the fact they still had their own mission of critical importance to the test as well. After all, while the supplies from their caravan were currently lost, the ones they carried for a defensive sector were still within their possession. That all being said, Fire Nation citizens were likely being held hostage by bandits somewhere nearby. That and the fact that the supplies stolen were meant to be taken to the capital and no doubt distributed from there for the Land of Fire's war effort made their recovery pretty important as well. It was difficult to decide which was more important, as typically if shinobi won their own conflict, the winning side then turned the shinobi against the common soldiery of their enemy, and turned the war completely in their favor. We can't just leave Fire Country citizens at the mercy of bandits, and even if not for this caravan, we need to put an end to the bandits before they can continue to harass or attack more people on this road, Minako said. Yeah, this is one of the biggest roads in the country. If even it isn't safe from bandits, our people's morale as well as their safety are endangered, Naruto put in. It's the right thing to do anyway, Issei added. Well, it seems like you came to a decision. So now what? Jiraiya asked his students. We should look around for any kind of clues to where the bandits ran off to with their haul, Issei answered. Get to it then, Jiraiya said with a chuckle as Issei fired off a goofy salute. Naruto and Minako set about looking around too. Jiraiya looked over the scene and drew his own conclusions but awaited his students in finding their own as well. They picked over the wreckage of the trade carts and abandoned crates. Naruto wisely scouted around the edges of the road and soon all 3 returned to their sensei to express their findings. They ambushed the caravan with a barrage of arrows from the north side of the road and killed the oxen pulling the first and last carts. Then they charged from the same side of the road and attacked the traders and their guards. The fight couldn't have lasted long. There was only 4 carts at most, and the bandits had to have numbered at least in their 30s if not more, Minako said. Yeah, more I think, up to 50 bandits in all. Most of the arrows shot were random, but the ones that killed the oxen were very precise and covered in a poison that is used in anesthesia in small doses. Mom keeps some with her for work. The bandits pulled a pair of carts up to the side after the fighting was over and also took the middle cart. They loaded everything they could and headed northwest from here. Wherever they originally came from had a lot of mud, The 2 carts they brought had it caked on the wheels still, and it left a trail to follow. Naruto explained. They didn't take things that they would have to sell. Just things that could trade in just about any village. There are entire crates full of things like dye that would look suspicious if offered for barter. They also took all the traders and guards hostage, as there are no bodies and the bandages here, and their show they did what they could to mend their prisoners' injuries before they set out. I think they want to ransom them. Issei added in what he had found. Excellent work, you 3. You guys really make a great team. So, knowing what you know now, are you prepared to continue this lesson? Jiraiya asked. He lingered on each of them with his eyes, locking gazes to drive his exact meaning home. The only step forward from here was to hunt down and exterminate the bandits. We understand what has to happen, Sensei, Minako said, getting nods of agreement from both of the boys on her team. Really? Well then, let's get going then. We don't want to let the bandits get too settled into their camp before we get there. If they aren't quite finished celebrating their haul of ill-gotten goods, they'll be that much easier to handle, don't you all think so? Jiraiya asked as the kids all nodded back to him, and the group once more took up their formation. The difference now, from when they originally set out, was the 4 Konoha shinobi had taken to the treetops and begun moving through the canopy of Fire Country's endless trees. They were in their domain up here, the preferred realm of the Hidden Leaf Ninja. The reason all other nations struggled to make real progress into Konoha territory in the war. Superior maneuverability. Konoha shinobi learned treetop travel as one of their earliest lessons, and while all ninja could do it, Konoha ninja perfected it. The nickname tree huggers didn't initially come from their peaceful nature. It came from Konoha shinobi hugging trees and literally lying in wait to drop down and massacre foreign troops. Something that should have kept bandits like they were hunting, scanning the treetops. They didn't though. Bandits rarely ever did. That's why they were so easily picked off and used as training for shinobi. Outside of ninja culture, the idea of utilizing the massacre of bandit tribes as training for kids as young as 6 would seem ludicrous. To ninja, the idea of passing up such an opportune moment to get a live fire drill in was ludicrous. We are getting close. I can see smoke a couple more miles to the northwest. Naruto called over to his team. Good, remain quiet from here on. Make a circuit of the camp's perimeter from the tree line, then we'll rendezvous on my position when we reach the camp. Jiraiya replied, getting a series of yes sirs from his students. The team initially circled around the camp just as instructed and took an opportunity to get a decent look at what they would be up against. As they had thought, the number of bandits was sizable, nearly 100 in total, with around half having participated in the ambush of the caravan. Likely several various bandit groups had slowly formed into a single force over the past year or so and begun preying on better and better targets as they grew more confident in their numbers and power. As far as the genin could tell, besides their numbers, there wasn't much separating the group from average thugs. To Jiraiya, though, he could tell the leaders of the bandits were a cut above the average rabble. Perhaps either former Shinobi Academy students, or even rogue genin from a minor village. The apparent leaders of the group were 8 younger figures that were easy enough to pick out due to their appearance. All of the other bandits looked like they had worked fields their whole lives. Either that or lived in the alleys of a larger town and scraped by through muggings and robbery. They were peasants who had gotten tired of their life of servitude or been uprooted by the war and left destitute with nothing but banditry to rely on for their next meal. Not those 8 though. They were strong, healthy, and well-dressed. They even seemed to discipline and train the other bandits to a degree. It was nothing much. Even compared to a normal soldier, these bandits would likely lose a one-on-one fight. But with superior numbers against lightly guarded trade caravans, they were a powerful force to be reckoned with. Sensei. Those 8 there. I think they are responsible for the special arrows that killed the caravan's oxen and trapped them. Naruto pointed out. Good eye, my boy. I think they have a little shinobi training. Less than you 3, but enough that it could be a problem. That plus their numbers makes this a problem. Still, this is a training mission, so what strategies do you have? Jiraiya asked, turning to his students. They took thoughtful expressions and repeatedly glanced at one another, hoping for a good idea from the others. It was kinda cute to watch them plotting a massacre that sounded so weird to think about. This sensei gig was a whole mess of odd moments, one after another. He was proud though. They were taking the mission seriously and really planning the best course of action to resolve the situation safely. That alone filled him with pride and hope for this next generation. Well, I could cast a genjutsu, but I don't think I have enough chakra to snag the whole camp under it. Maybe at most like a quarter of them, and since I don't really know how skilled they are, those leaders might be able to break it. Issei commented. What if you don't have to catch all of them with it though? Minako asked. What do you mean? Issei asked. Well, what if we waited for nightfall, then you just catch the sentries with it, and we eliminate them first, then we take out the leaders in their sleep and take out the rest as we need to. Minako suggested. That could work, but we need to be careful. If we alert the camp, they will have the numbers and hostages to use against us. Naruto pointed out. So we wait for dark then, Issei said as he nodded at Naruto's point. It's the best we can probably come up with. Sensei, what do you think? Naruto asked. I was waiting on one of you to ask. This might be a test, but never forget to use everything at your disposal. That includes me. A good shinobi uses all of their available options, alright? Jiraiya lectured, getting nods from the kids. Okay, your plan is sound. While you guys take out the sentries and the sleeping bandits, I will handle the leaders. I'll also send some clones to pick up the hostages. You came up with a great plan for your first real mission, so when the sun sets, show me what you got, kids. Jiraiya said with a grin, getting a series of determined smirks back. It's gonna be really boring waiting though, Naruto said with a pout, getting his female teammate to coo over him. Not that he minded. He did adore attention, every little kid did. Yeah. Jiraiya agreed as he looked up and realized it was only an hour or two after noon. Nightfall would be hours away. Issei stared at his classmate as she focused on the youngest member of their team, and realized that the little kid was likely going to have her interest more than he ever would. He wouldn't even make anything of it, he was 6. What did 6-year-olds want with girls? To play patty cake? So for the next several hours Naruto and Minako sat and played a few quiet games like I Spy and such. Jiraiya worked on notes, for a book he had decided to write, and Issei pouted profusely about his lot in life. Finally, though, the sun set and the bandits began to bed down for a night of sleep. Around 15 remained up and about as guards, patrolling between the tents and hovels the criminals had erected. Most of the fires slowly burned down to embers and the camp was poorly lit and organized as a whole. Stereotypical of bandits. It was just as they hoped. Now was time for them to put their plan into motion. Issei crept down to the lowest branches he could still conceal himself on and picked out his targets for his jutsu. Slowly and methodically he wove the hand signs and the men on guard began to glance around oddly as if checking their surroundings. It didn't last long though, as they soon slowly sank to the ground with soft laughter and mumbled words. Nice job, kid, you got every one of the sentries. What did you cast on them anyway? Jiraiya complimented as he joined him on the branch and looked out over the kid's success. Thanks, sensei. I used my very own original genjutsu. I based it on the hell viewing technique, Issei said. Really? That's super impressive, kid. They don't look all that frightened though, the Sannin said as he looked back out at the happily smiling, even drooling, men in the camp. Oh, that's because I based it on the basic principle of the hell viewing technique. I call it the paradise viewing technique. Instead of your worst fear, it's your dream girl with huge knockers acting like your personal masseuse. You feel every second of the illusion. I came up with it cause I was tired of having to flip through pages in a magazine while I took care of myself. Now I can just cast it on myself and it all works out, Issei said proudly until he saw his teacher's expression. What's wrong? Issei asked. He was terrified of doing something wrong in front of his idol. Nothing, really, it's nothing, just that mental image is really fucking depressing. Damn, I wonder if Tsunade knew about that, if she would cut me some slack? Jiraiya mostly said to himself as he scratched at his chin in thought. Sensei, don't be like that. Issei practically whined but was ignored by his teacher. Nah, if anything she would just kick my ass for having Naruto on my team around us both. No winning with her, but I guess the saying is you can't help who you love, Jiraiya said before he took off into the camp followed by Naruto and Minako. As they passed by Issei, Naruto gave Issei a reassuring smile to try and cheer his teammate up, still not fully mature enough to get the whole aspect of illusionary masturbatory aids. Minako, however, clearly was. The look of those two crystal blue eyes searing a glare into him as they passed hurt Issei more than their training spars usually did. Plus the way she seemed to put herself between Naruto and him made Issei realize that the younger girl thought of him as a bigger threat for the kid than the fact he was about to help butcher something like 100 people. As they arrived at the edge of the camp right beside the two hallucinating sentries who had begun to moan slightly, Naruto wasted no time. He lashed out as he had been trained. Just as he had done when those 3 men had tried to take Kushina. It was fast and painless, all things considered. They likely hadn't even realized they were dying in their final moments, as they tried to regain their senses. His kunai of course broke them from their sweet illusions the moment it bit into their throat. Well done. Now, I'll go handle the bosses, Jiraiya said as he made a pair of shadow clones. These 2 copies will collect the hostages. You 3 know what you have to do. I'll be watching. If you need anything, just spike your chakra and I will be there. With that, the group separated. Minako was a bit disturbed by how easily the youngest member of their team dispatched his enemies. He was unbothered even as he wiped blood off his hands and continued on. She was herself shockingly able to handle the bloodshed as well. They had been trained for this, but after the third man she had slain, she couldn't help but feel like a monster. It was a numb feeling, and it made it all the worse. Issei struggled the most. His first kill had gone smoothly, but the second had come out of his slumber ready to fight and had to be roughly put down, and the third had woken up just in time to utter a single plea of mercy before his eyes darkened with death. The boy was suddenly happy Jiraiya had refused to let them eat while they waited for nightfall. No doubt had he had anything in his stomach it would have been coming back up into the grass by now. Soon the sentries had been handled and the genin moved on to the sleeping bandits. It was effectively the same situation as with the sentries, only they were easier to accidentally awaken. Twice Naruto had to think fast and hurriedly run through the hand signs for an earth jutsu to stop bandits from sounding the alarm for their comrades. He pitted the men he killed with it, buried instantly under several foot of earth, suffocated in moments. It had to be a terrifying way to go. The little boy knew he would have nightmares of this whole night for weeks, but he had to keep going. He was a shinobi of the leaf, and he had to make sure their mission was completed. For the good of Konoha. It didn't silence the voice in his head that whimpered with every slice of his kunai or twist of his fingers as they cast another murderous jutsu. It didn't stop that little part of him that just wanted to go home and be wrapped up in his mother's arms and cry. He ignored the silent tears as they slid down his cheeks and kept up his work. It didn't make sense to him. He hadn't been all that upset when he fought and killed those men taking Kushina, but now, as he sent these sleeping criminals into the Pure Lands, he found himself crying on their behalf. Jiraiya sadly sighed as he watched his son and his other two students truly lose their innocence. For Minako and Issei this was a first. They were trained for it, but there is nothing that can properly prepare you for the first time. For Naruto it was a bit more complicated. He had taken life before. It was different though. Defending oneself or another person and cutting the throat of a sleeping man you've never encountered before held a very different weight on the soul. He hoped he could help his boy to handle this in a healthy way. The others as well. The Sannin never could figure out if the leaders of the bandits really were rogue nin or if they were just random folks who had gotten their hands on a few shinobi tricks somehow. It didn't matter in the end. They all died silently and without a fight like most of the camp. It was a long night for all of Team 7. By the time the sun was rising they had cleared the camp and the hostages had been extremely grateful if a bit unsettled by the blood appearances of the three children. Still, with the return supplies they had been transporting and a few livestock that had probably come from other caravans that had been hit, the traders were soon underway to the capital once again. Team 7 however still had a mission to complete as well as a need to report the whole incident, so noon was too concerned about their extremely late arrival to the fort. When they arrived around noon the little genin were exhausted. Jiraiya couldn't blame them. He definitely wanted to lay down for a nap himself. He didn't think the outpost commander would mind if they did just that. Jiraiya hoped to set out the next morning. Despite the quick nature of the entire thing, each of the genin was miserable for the debriefing and transfer of the supply scrolls. They hadn't talked at all on their way to the fort, and by this point they looked more of the mind to cuss their sensei out than to thank him as he gave them each a bedroll to sleep on. The jonin had laughed lightly as they went out like lights, curled up together, while Minako had insisted in a terrifyingly polite tone that Issei remain at least 3 foot apart from her and Naruto. Still she and Naruto had been curled up together, and Issei looked comfortable himself, so Jiraiya was happy to catch some sleep as well. They all slept through the night, and joined the guards for breakfast in the morning. By now the story of what they had done with the bandits had passed around a bit, and the kids were congratulated on their first real mission. They didn't really know what to do with so much praise but were happy to be treated so warmly by their comrades. It didn't take long for conversation to carry on from the topic of the bandits into more important discussion, all sprouting from the existence of such a bandit group right along one of the main roads of the country. If we weren't so spread out, bandits like that would think twice about trying something. I never would have imagined the central highways having bandit troubles, always considered that a provincial issue. One Chunin commented. Well, what do you expect? We might be winning but the war is still going on and the front lines grow longer every damn day. I just wish the shit was over. I haven't been home for more than 2 weeks at a time in the last 4 years. I have a kid who barely knows me now. Another man complained. It won't be long now though, right? I mean, Lord Third sent out those messages last week about how well the war was going now and how victory was imminent and all that. Akunoichi jumped into the conversation. We're only this well off cause of the hidden whirlpool. The Uzumaki and the other shinobi in the land of eddies took nearly all of Kiri and Kumo's standing armies with them. They've been on the defensive from us ever since. A jonin chimed in. The stone and sand have been ripping one another apart throughout the buffer states on their borders. I heard that there was a massive battle where some Suna kid butchered countless IWA nin. A real bloodbath. Another Chunin commented. Yeah, Sasori of the Red Sands is what they are calling him. Evidently, he stained an entire section of the desert red and it dyed the sand permanently darker than the rest of Wind Country. Another Chunin piped up. That sounds like a load of horseshit ow. Another shinobi began only to get smacked by the kunoichi beside him as she motioned toward the genin. They just wiped out like 100 bandits. You really think that me cussing in front of them is a big deal? He asked. They're still kids. Watch your filthy mouth, she said simply. The majority of the room ignored the pair as they fell into squabbles. They had often teased them about becoming a couple, but really it was annoying how often they sounded like an old married couple. Heard that Rain Country is off limits to every side now. Hanzo finally unified the country and sealed up the borders. Said no foreign shinobi in or out. A jonin commented to his fellows as they continued to discuss the various fronts in the war. Naruto noticed the slight frown on his father's face upon hearing the news of AIM. He knew that his parents and Orochimaru had received their moniker from Hanzo himself while in Rain Country near the beginning of the war, but he wasn't sure what all that had entailed beyond the man sparing them and giving them the title of Sannin. "Sensei, are you alright?" he asked quietly so not to draw attention toward them both. Oh yeah? I just have a lot of memories of Rain Country, I guess. Did you know I had a team of students there before you guys? Jiraiya asked, getting the attention of Minako and Issei with that new information. Wait, you taught genin before us? I thought we were your first students, Issei said. You were my first students from home. My first actual team, I guess. My students in AIM were a group of orphans I found and spent a while training to have a chance to survive. The war has been especially hard on Rain Country. Never forget that the minor countries suffer way more than the rest of us whenever a big war like this one kicks off. There have hardly been any battles within the territory of the Big Five nations at all. Almost all of the battles have occurred in minor countries. I mean, look at Yuzu. It wasn't even the first minor country to be destroyed, and it probably won't be the last. Jiraiya lectured. Damn. It sounds bad, but thank Kami I was born in Konoha, Issei said with a thoughtful frown. Yeah, I thought the same thing while I was on campaign in AIM. Life's rough anywhere you go during a war, but Konoha is a bit better off than just about anybody else. Jiraiya had a hint of pride in that statement. Anyway, that's enough of that. Finish up your breakfast, we need to get home on the double. I'm sure Naruto's mother is already pissed we are taking an extra 2 days to complete the mission, Jiraiya said, hiding his actual fear of what awaited him back at Konoha. Oh, that's right. I really will miss you, Dad, Naruto said as he turned back to his food. You are really cruel to your old man, you know that, Naruto? Jiraiya lamented. Not as cruel as Mom will be, Naruto simply said, causing the man to shiver slightly. Where are you learning this kind of behavior at? Jiraiya asked. Auntie Orochimaru. She said it makes me a better shinobi to act cold. I didn't get it at first, but she told me to just watch how she interacts with people. So I'm doing what she does with you, Naruto said with the innocence only a child can hold. So I get that I'm not from a clan, but that's not normal, right? Minako asked Issei as they watched the interaction between Naruto and Jiraiya. I mean, I don't think anything about the Senju family can be considered normal, Issei said with a shrug. Good point, the girl replied as she watched Naruto stare up at his father, as the man lectured him on how he shouldn't act at all like Orochimaru but should instead act like his gallant father. She had to giggle when the boy simply said he would have to think about it, and went back to his breakfast. She could feel the grief and guilt from the night before ease just a little bit at the sight of her team. That was part of why she was able to do something that she might normally consider so heinous. For the family she had gained in Team 7. Even if it had moments like the night before, she couldn't wait for her next missions with her team. Hataki Estate. He's so precious, Sensei. Kushina cooked as she looked at the baby resting in his father's arms. That he is, Tsukumo said as he stared down at the baby with pride. So he's almost a year old already? Kushina's teammate Sam asked. Not quite, but he's getting there. Growing like a weed, Tsukumo's wife Kana said with a smile as she looked at her husband and son together in the chair. Are you certain that this is what you desire, Mrs. Hataki? Shibi asked in his typically blunt manner. Shibi, I told you to call me Kana, and yes, I've been off active duty for more than a year by this point. It's driving me a bit crazy, plus with Tsukumo and you three around, how could I ever worry about Kakashi's well-being? The young mother asked, grinning at the kids as they sat around their sensei and marveled at his baby. Well, you can count on us, Kushina confidently announced. You bet, Sam agreed. Shibi for his part simply nodded as he adjusted his sunglasses. Tsukumo and Kanna chuckled at the three kids. Tsukumo bragged about his students to his wife non-stop. He had avoided taking on genin in the past due to disliking the responsibility it would be. Now, here he was having brought them into his household. His genin were more than just students, they were family, and he was disappointed it took him till now to take on a team. He adored his kids. Yes, his kids. The thought alone made this time together all the sweeter. Plus it was thanks to his kids that he could take some time with Kanna again. Kakashi was an easy child, but between the war and taking care of him, Tsukumo and Kanna rarely had time to enjoy their marriage the way couples were supposed to. So what is the mission you are going on tomorrow? Kushina asked Kanna. Nothing big. After so long on leave, they are easing me back into basic chunin tasks like patrol and message delivery. Tomorrow is just a patrol along the Rice Country border. It's been quiet up there since before I got pregnant with Kakashi, so it shouldn't be a big deal, she said. Well, I hope it all goes smoothly, Tsum said. Her own parents had been killed on patrols, so it worried her a bit, but Rice Country and the neighboring land of Iron had been neutral throughout the war, and the only real conflict there had been 3 years ago, when IWA shinobi had chased a team of Kusa shinobi all the way along the edge of the land of Iron into Rice Country. The various clans of Rice Country were not unified in a single village, but they banded together to kill not only all the IWA ninja but the Kusa ninja too. Now I know it's a bit sudden, but can you all stay and watch Kakashi while Kanna and I go out to dinner? Tsukumo asked, getting awkward looks from Tsum and Shibi. Hey, it's alright if you can't, Kanna said. I can. Well, actually I was supposed to meet up with Naruto, Minako, and Mikoto for dinner too, Kushina said as she cast her eyes to the floor in thought. What if they came here? Tsukumo asked quickly, causing his wife to give him a dry look. The man easily ignored it. She was about to go on a mission, and thanks to Kakashi the two of them had seriously cut down on their one-on-one time. Oh, Mikoto already adores Kakashi. When you had her team babysit a month ago, she would stop talking about him for like 2 weeks. Naruto is pretty young, but Minako is crazy responsible, Kushina said, getting both Tsukumo and Kushina to turn to Kanna with pleading faces, causing her to sigh before nodding. Oh, what the heck, it has been a while, she said as she eyed her grinning husband. Yeah. Well, Kushina, I can get a hold of them for you if you want, Tsukumo said, shifting his focus to the redhead on his team. No need, check it out, Kushina said proudly as 2 shadow clones appeared. The rest of the room were surprised. Tsukumo began chuckling though. Kushina was always a bit unpredictable. She must have been learning the shadow clone jutsu in secret. Tsukumo knew she had some trouble with chakra control because of her burden. It seemed that she had gotten more out of growing close with her fiancé and his family than just bonds with a new family. One of them must have given it to her as an alternative to the regular clone jutsu. Alright. So we will head out now then. Just make sure to follow the list we gave you last time you watched Kakashi, Kanna said as she and Tsukumo left. Tsum and her Niken and Shibi all left a short while later. They planned to meet up for breakfast at Tsum's favorite little restaurant the next day. The plan was sometime around 10, but Kushina would send a clone if she couldn't make it. Something told them that it was going to be a bit of a sleepover babysitting session at the Hataki estate. Senju compound. Naruto happily enjoyed his lunch with Orochimaru and his mother. Both women had been a bit unfriendly toward his father the last couple of weeks since they had returned from their mission, but today Jiraiya wasn't coming around at all as he had a solo mission to handle near the border of the Land of Rivers. Hopefully it would be done soon, but until then Naruto and his team were more or less told to work on what they already had until he returned. Minako was going to come over to spar for a little while, but that wasn't for another hour at least. He hoped to get some time with his mother and Orochimaru like the old days, which honestly weren't that old, being only a brief few months in the past. The usual bonding experience if teaching Naruto something had continued on after the meal as the women took to teaching him more about anatomy. More than he ever wanted to know, but plenty that could be helpful in plenty of ways. Tsunade had been adamant he learn a more advanced healing jutsu she knew than the one he had previously been taught. Naruto was happy to learn it, though he was less happy at practicing on a fish from their family pond. Tsunade had also gotten frustrated about that when Naruto had been so stubborn about her killing one of their own fish just to practice reviving it. Orochimaru hadn't helped things as while Tsunade was teaching him to revive the fish, she had planned to teach him the most effective places to strike with poison-laced weapons depending on the type. Naruto, you didn't hesitate with the men trying to kidnap Kushina, or with those bandits, did you? His mom asked him. No, but they weren't just innocent fishes that rely on us to feed and take care of them, Naruto had replied as he crossed his arms. Orochimaru had of course gotten a kick out of the entire interaction. She'd made things harder for Tsunade, at least the mother thought they would be until her son actually responded. What if we brought a convicted criminal, like a rapist or murderer? Would you be fine with it then? Orochimaru had asked, completely ignoring Tsunade's glare. I dunno, maybe? Naruto had responded, gaining a gleam in Orochimaru's eyes that Tsunade recognized immediately. Orochimaru, no, he's only 6. Tsunade said with a steely tone. Oh, relax, Nade. I won't start him on something like that till he's at least 8 or 9. Besides, he has killed more people than you and I combined at that age. Orochimaru replied with a smile. The look Tsunade shot the snake mistress enforced that it was time to drop the topic. After all, the seals on the Senju compound had picked up Minako's arrival. Orochimaru would definitely be bringing this up again though. Naruto simply had far too much potential to be stunted with such trivial things as his age. His bloodline wasn't the only thing that drew her attention after all. Naruto had greeted his teammate at the gate, and the girl was happy to be admitted to the compound and led off to the training ground. She had met both Tsunade and Orochimaru by now but remained a bit nervous around them. They were both the examples all Konoha Kunoichi looked up to after all. Even if it was Jiraiya who Minako shared the most with ability-wise. Tsunade and Orochimaru had approved of Minako so far. She was far better than Naruto's other teammate in their opinion. Tsunade wasn't pleased with how much like Jiraiya the boy was, though he seemed even worse than Jiraiya had been at 12. Orochimaru simply considered the boy unfit to be on the same team with Naruto. Even Minako barely scraped by in that regard though, so it was a bit hard to get Orochimaru's approval. Mom, we'll be sparring out back, Naruto said as he raced past with the more yellowish blonde of his teammate trailing after. The girl did her best to show respect to the two women while being hauled along by the boy, causing Tsunade and Orochimaru to chuckle. They'll be cute together, Orochimaru said as she turned to finish her drink. What? Tsunade asked. Oh please, you really think Naruto will have just that Uzumaki Spitfire for a woman? I for one am going to push for a whole slew of girls to bear his children, Orochimaru said with a grin at the thought of so many more Narutos running around. Gah, he's 6. You sound like sensei, no worse, you sound like Jiraiya, Tsunade said. Alright, no need to be mean, but Tsunade, he is the heir to Lord First and Last Male Senju, but more than all that he is Jiraiya's son. Wait till he hits puberty. Orochimaru slipped out of the room at that, as she saw the blonde's honey-colored eyes had hardened in realization. Tsunade huffed in indignation at the thought. If she had her way, Naruto would still be in the academy, he wouldn't be betrothed to a girl nearly twice his age, he wouldn't have to worry about much more than making friends and playing, but she didn't have her way. For being labeled princess so often, looking back, Tsunade realized she rarely ever got her way. Especially in regards to her son. It was frustrating and exhausting just to think about. Especially when she knew she really couldn't shield him from the life of a shinobi at all. At least he seemed happy. Part of that happiness stemmed from his team and the much improved relationship with Kushina. The children didn't love each other by any stretch of the imagination. They were little kids after all. They were very good friends now though. Kushina had slowly grown to include Naruto in the things that she found interesting, and Tsunade's little boy was happy to reciprocate. Similarly, this Minako seemed like a very good friend for Naruto to have. She was sweet, determined, hardworking, and above all seemed loyal to her friends and Konoha. It helped things that Tsunade had grilled the poor girl the first time Naruto had brought her over. Not because she suspected the girl of doing something to Naruto. It was more because Naruto had cheerily told him how much Minako had evidently idolized the Sannin, but Jiraiya most of all. That had been awkward till she understood what Minako really admired was their similar backgrounds. It had been part of what initially attracted Tsunade to Jiraiya as well. A hard-working war orphan stepping out of the shadow of clan shinobi and making a name for himself. After that realization, she couldn't blame the girl for her idolization of the idiot. She would see the rest of Jiraiya's idiocy in time, but as it was, Tsunade fully intended to lend a hand for the girl to do just as she dreamed and make a name for herself. It was a win-win. Minako became a legend, and Naruto had a reliable and loyal S-class kunoichi on his side. Or at least he would. Mom! Naruto called, getting her to lean out the window to see her boy with Minako, and a now-present Kushina standing there together. Kushina? Tsunade asked. I'm just a shadow clone. The real Kushina is at Sensei Shao's. I just wanted to invite Naruto and Minako over to hang out and babysit together, the clone answered. Oh, well, I don't have a problem with it. I know the two of them were planning on sparring for a while. I'll leave it up to you if you want to go, Naruto. Just know I want you home before nightfall, Tsunade said before she disappeared into the house again. Doesn't the Hitaki estate have a training ground as well? Minako asked. Yeah? Kushina replied she had an idea of where the blonde girl was going though. Do you think your sensei and his wife would mind if we used it to spar? Nothing like an all-out fight, but Naruto and I have both been working on some things since we came back and need to field test it. Minako explained. Tsukumo-sensei wouldn't mind, as long as you guys keep it to the training ground and don't tear things up too much. Kushina's clone said with a shrug. Sounds good then. Let's go. Naruto and Minako followed after Kushina's clone as each of them chatted about their day and what they had been doing lately. It didn't take long to get to the Hitaki estate. Kushina had been telling them that her friend Makoto would be joining them. Neither of them really knew the Uchiha girl all that well, but they were aware of her. Nearly everyone in Konoha was aware of the Uchiha prodigies that were the current pride of the clan. Naruto had been a bit intimidated by them, to be honest. Minako had been the same, though she wasn't as much younger than the two of them like Naruto was. Makoto was 2 years older than even Kushina and Minako after all, and had graduated a year early. The girl was already a chunin, so Minako hoped to talk with her a bit about what to expect more as a kunoichi as well, or at least make friends with another fellow kunoichi like she had begun to do with Kushina. The clone led the pair into the house before popping when they reached their destination. Both Naruto and Minako were a bit surprised to see the usually vibrant Kushina acting so mellow, as she gently rocked the child in her arms. Minako was at Kushina's side in an instant, cooing over the baby along with Kushina, while Naruto preferred watching from a small distance away. The baby simply looked so fragile, so he didn't want to really hold him that much. What are you doing way over there, Naruto? Kushina asked the boy as she noticed him keeping his distance on the far side of the couch. What do you mean? Naruto asked. Well, don't you want to see the baby? She prodded. I can see him already, Naruto replied, getting Kushina to sigh as Minako giggled at the interaction. If Naruto had been a little older, and a little less blunt in nature, Kushina would have thought he was being intentionally aggravating in his words. She knew better by now, though. All the time she had thought he was a stuck-up little brat had really just been her projecting on him until recently. With a shake of her head, Kushina dropped that line of thinking and abandoned her attempts to draw Naruto in to hold the baby. Boys always were weird when it came to babies, according to Tsunade and Kana. Can I hold him? Minako asked. Sure, but be careful, he might wake up and he's cute until he starts crying, Kushina said as she handed Kakashi over to the other girl. He's too cute, Minako said, taking Kakashi into her arms. The little baby slowly opened his eyes, tilting his head slightly at the new person holding him. To Kushina's shock, he didn't cry. He just looked up at Minako before snuggling in closely against her chest and trying to go back to sleep. The redhead girl's jaw dropped for a moment before she crossed her arms and blew out a huff of air that flicked her bangs away from her face. What is it? Minako asked. Nothing, it's just the first time I held him he bawled until I sang him to sleep. For you he just smiles and goes out like a light, Kushina complained. Oh, well, I'm sure he's just tired right now, Kushina. Minako tried to comfort her friend. Maybe he just likes Minako more? Naruto asked from his place on the couch, causing Minako to sigh and Kushina to shoot him a betrayed look that confused him. What? My mom said that babies relax and cry less around people they feel safe with. Minako must just feel really safe, Naruto explained. So what, he doesn't feel safe around me? Kushina asked heatedly, though she was at least mindful enough to keep her voice down and not disturb the baby in her friend's arms. Well, he seemed like he felt pretty safe around you when we showed up, Naruto pointed out. He could tell Kushina was starting to become annoyed with him, so it was time to back up with his words and calm her down. Kushina clicked her teeth but turned back to the baby while Miyako did her best not to grin at the interaction. It was always a bit funny for her watching Naruto and Kushina interact. They got along, but Kushina's hot-headed personality made them a comedy act half of the time. The trio sat and talked for a little while before another Kushina clone led a tall, dark-haired girl into the room. Naruto recognized her even if he hadn't really talked to her at all. She was 7 years older than him, and while she wasn't dressed the part right now, he could tell she was a kunoichi by the way she moved, similar to Kushina and Minako. Actually similar to Orochimaru as well, though his mother broke that mold and sort of purposefully made her presence known wherever she went as loudly as possible with every step. That was one reason she always had on such tall heels. To get the clicking sound they gave off with every step. That, and the truth was that Tsunade Senju was actually a very short woman. Makoto! Great, everyone is here now, Kushina chirped, seeing her older friend. The Uchiha girl smiled softly at the redhead. Clearly used to her personality, and like Naruto and Minako not put off by her behavior, only amused by it. She took a place on the couch between Naruto and the others before they all began introducing themselves. Naruto was a bit surprised. He hadn't had a favorable opinion of the Uchiha, thanks in part to his mother carrying a bit of Tobirama's prejudice bolstered by the fact that her grandfather had never quite healed fully after his duel with Madara. Mikoto seemed pleasant though, and Naruto was smart enough to give her, and her clan, an unbiased opportunity to show they weren't what he had imagined they were. So, you're Naruto Senju then? Already graduated from the academy and out doing missions. That's pretty impressive, Mikoto said as she eyed the boy. I guess. Naruto responded. He could tell that the girl had her doubts. Wouldn't you have rather graduated with other people your age? She asked. I don't know. They just told me I had to graduate, Naruto answered back, getting a confused look from Mikoto. Who's they? She asked. My dad and the Hokage, I think the elders too. My mom was pretty mad though, Naruto answered. They made you graduate early, they didn't give you the option? Mikoto asked. Minako and Kushina were also surprised. They had assumed he had been pressured into it, but that he had been given the option like they had. No. Naruto shook his head while shrugging. He didn't really see the big deal though. Mikoto turned to share a look with Kushina, who gave her a half-hearted smile in return. The Uchiha girl hummed for a moment. I see. Mikoto, do you want to hold Kakashi? Kushina asked. Oh, yes, please, the older girl said with a smile as she leaned forward in her seat. She adored babies and hoped to have a sizable family of her own once she was an adult. Minako passed the child off to Mikoto, and once again Kakashi didn't cry, causing Kushina to pout at the fact the baby seemed to like her friends more. A little while later, Naruto and Minako decided to head out back to the training ground to spar as they had planned. Kushina led Mikoto back as well to watch from the back porch of the house. They sat and watched as Naruto and Minako started out with taijutsu. Both had known the two blondes were talented, but Kushina especially was shocked by how far they had come. Their speed and agility in a fight had easily doubled since graduation, and suddenly Kushina felt a little lacking, even if she was proud of the two of them for their growth. As they transitioned to include jutsu into the spar, Mikoto began to take far more interest. Minako was fast, and very skilled with the simplest of shinobi tools, however she also had great skill with seals, and it was apparent with the amount of traps she was able to set up. None caught Naruto though, and he was the one that had Mikoto's interest the most. He was a Senju. That would have been enough to catch the interest of any Uchiha. Their clans had been rivals since before the beginning of recorded history. Their greatest members, Madara and Hashirama, had been the embodiment of that rivalry. Now here was a little boy capable of using Hashirama's abilities with such ease. Mikoto couldn't properly imagine what he would be like in a few years, let alone as an adult. He's something else, isn't he? Mikoto said as she watched the 6-year-old fight like he was born to do it. Yeah, I guess. He's a really good kid, Kushina replied softly, causing Mikoto to glance her way. So, no longer up in arms about being betrothed to a how did you put it? Oh, that's right, a spoiled little brat that would probably cry for his mama the first time he had to spar, Mikoto teased. Kushina blushed faintly at the reminder. Well, so what? I've been wrong before. I'm still not happy about being forced to marry someone one day. But as long as it's him, maybe it'll be okay? Mikoto asked with a chuckle. Oh, shut up, I just like him alright, not like that. He's just a good kid and friendly, and he will be crazy strong one day, Kushina defended weakly. And him saving you like a little mini hero saving a princess had nothing to do with it, Mikoto continued to tease. Well, I am a princess after all, Kushina joked, getting a small snort of humor from her friend. Right, a regular damsel the habanero is, Mikoto said. Ma, stop picking at me when you've got your own relationship troubles, Kushina shot back. What do you mean? Mikoto asked. Well, it's not like you have any choice either. Your betrothed is already a jonin and is only 15, right? Are you going to tell me you two are a match made in heaven? Kushina asked. Well, Fugaku is a strong, dutiful, and determined person, so I'm sure I can come to care for him. We'll have a good marriage, Mikoto replied as if she had rehearsed the lines. Come to care for him? Wow, you can't even say it. That's worrisome, don't you think? You can't even picture yourself one day falling for your future husband? Kushina asked. What? Kushina, I don't like what you're saying. Besides, do you see that for yourself? Can you see yourself falling in love with little Naruto? Mikoto asked with a bit more heat than she really intended to. Yeah. Honestly, I kinda can. It's not gonna happen anytime soon. I mean, he is a little kid, I'm still a kid too, I guess. That won't last forever though. If he is like the people who raised him, though, I can definitely see it happening. He won't be perfect, and neither will I, but perfect is boring. I would hate marrying your fiancé. He's so prim and proper, but if that's your thing, it's your thing, I guess. Kushina replied. Mikoto didn't answer. She was a bit shocked by how deep the younger girl had thought about it. Kushina always managed to surprise her. What's more, she seemed to always manage to make her question things. Whether it was about her clan, her betrothal, or a mission. That was part of why Mikoto liked being around her so much, she supposed. There was never a way to expect what would be discussed. So, what have you and your team been up to, Mikoto? Kushina asked. Nothing especially exciting. Patrols along the Tea Country border mostly. Pretty quiet down that way since, you know. Mikoto awkwardly remarked. The Uzumaki clan's fall was still pretty sore for Kushina, but the truth was Konoha's borders were safer than they had been in decades, and it was because of the Uzumaki clan sacrificing themselves. I imagine so. Kushina said with a dark look, thinking of Kiri and Kumo and all the other minor villages that had crippled themselves by taking out her family. What about you and your team? Mikoto asked. Mostly missions around Konoha still. I think we'll be doing more messenger missions soon though. Sensei seemed annoyed by that, since between him and his wife's schedules they will need to get babysitters for Kakashi more often. Kushina answered. I will have to take that mission from time to time. He's just so cute. Mikoto cooed at the little baby. Kushina grinned as well. She wouldn't mind babysitting either, to give her sensei and his wife a chance to catch up when they could. Before long, Naruto and Minako were done. Their spar had been impressive, but it was clear either had gone all out. Both of the other girls wanted to go, but Kakashi had needed his diaper changed and fed, so they went back in. Naruto sent a clone to bring back dinner for the group, and they enjoyed the rest of the evening just eating and playing with little Kakashi until it began to near dark. Just as Naruto was getting ready to head home, someone else knocked at the door. They were a bit surprised to see that it was Fugaku, Mikoto's betrothed, standing there. The older boy seemed a bit awkward, though it was hard to tell as his face was set in a stoic expression typical of most Uchiha. Mikoto, I was told you came over to visit your friends. I have a break between missions and was wondering if you would mind me escorting you back to the clan's district. Fugaku asked. Oh, I wouldn't mind, I guess. I'll see you all another time, Mikoto said, waving goodbye to the others. She'd planned to stay the night, but Fugaku was almost always busy with missions near the borders or police duty when he was in Konoha, so this was a chance to get to know her fiancé a bit better. Goodbye, the others chorused. The pair of Uchiha noticed they weren't the only ones leaving as Naruto walked with them to the gate. Fugaku eyed him curiously. Everyone had heard about the second coming of Hashirama by now, and Fugaku couldn't help but be interested. Naruto was a full 9 years younger than Fugaku himself, but the Uchiha wasn't stupid, or near as prideful as many thought him to be. He knew Naruto was something different. Had he been closer to his own age, he would have jumped at the chance to be his rival. As it stood, he would be watching Naruto intently in the future. Tsunade sat opposite the man she once thought that she loved. He had as grim of an expression as she did, and the brooding figure of Orochimaru in the corner was just as bad. And you are completely sure that is the case? Tsunade asked. 120%. I saw them there myself. They're getting ready for a move, not sure what they hope to achieve really, but their technology is insane, Tsunade. Jiraiya replied. Not sure what they hope to achieve. Don't be stupid, the same thing every hidden village wants. They want to kick our ass and take more power and territory for themselves. Orochimaru scoffed. They don't even use land. They live in a couple of floating cities and airships. It's nothing like I've ever seen before, Jiraiya explained. If they were smart, they would go after one of the weakened villages. We're the powerhouse right now. They should be hitting Kiri or preferably Kumo, Tsunade argued. No, it would make more sense to hit us. We're the dominant power, but we are spread thin and they can pick off the other villages after knocking us either down a peg or out of the game completely, Orochimaru replied. Whatever the case, we are about to enter the true leg of this war. One that is going to be a lot worse than we initially imagined, and one that is about to see everything we have put into combat, Jiraiya said, causing Tsunade to get a better understanding of what he was really saying. The Genin too? Kami, they can't be that big of a threat. Surely they would be better off running support and logistics missions, the Senju matriarch argued. Most will be, yeah, the man replied. Damn it! Tsunade growled as she realized he didn't mean Genin in general, but only the Genin she truly cared about. Did you tell Sensei that Naruto and Kushina were too important of assets to risk on the front line? Orochimaru immediately set into trying to find a way to change what was planned for the kids. Of course I did. Then those old fossil bastards jumped in about how Naruto and Kushina had to be there to make a show of force. At least they will be pairing Tsukumo and I together with the teams and sending some Chunin with us for support. Truth be told, I think they see this as an opportunity more than an actual threat. Jiraiya grumbled. They've all gone senile. Orochimaru hissed as she thumped into a seat beside Tsunade. The three Sannin fell into silence at that. They couldn't just buck orders, but at least Hiruzen was giving them some safety in numbers and two of Konoha's strongest to protect them. Jiraiya, if something happens to my son, I will kill you. Then I will try to kill Sensei and the elders too. Remember that. Tsunade growled. The only way our son will get hurt is if I'm already dead. I can promise you that, Jiraiya said before standing up and heading out. He wanted to peek in and see Naruto before he returned to his own house. He is an idiot, but you know as well as I do that he would never let someone harm Naruto. Orochimaru tried to console her friend. Unless it was in the interest of the village, Tsunade said before she stood up and headed to bed, leaving a sighing snake Sannin in her wake. The woman looked down at the photographs Jiraiya had snapped for them and their sensei. Troops and all manner of advanced contraptions gathered together on an unclaimed island off the coast of Fire Country. It had once been joint territory of the Land of Fire and Eddies, but the First Shinobi War had caused a manpower crisis that left the island unguarded. Clearly that didn't mean uninhabited. The Land of Sky was clearly off their rocker if they thought they could take on the whole rest of the continent. At least there would be if 2/5 of the world powers weren't crippled and the other two weren't spread so thin that their capitals were easy pickings for anyone that could get through the country's defenses. This fight might not put the Land of Sky at the top, but it could surely lay Konoha and the Land of Fire low. The send-off that Tsunade and Orochimaru had given their unit had been depressing. Tsunade was an emotional woman, but not really a weepy one. She was practically sobbing as she embraced not only Naruto but Kushina as well. The little redhead wasn't sure what to think about that, but she has to admit it was nice to be a part of the Senju family. The team, composed of both Jiraiya's squad and Tsukumo's squad, would be deploying into the Land of Rivers where the first fighting had begun. A week prior, and both the village hidden in the valleys and the Hidden Leaf had been skirmishing with each other along the border. Now though they fought together against a frighteningly advanced force from the village hidden in the sky. Already the first 3 battles had taken place, and all had been narrow defeats for Konoha. A handful of the sky shinobi utilized some sort of back-mounted aircraft that let them strafe and assault shinobi on the ground with near impunity. Thankfully they couldn't use ninjutsu while in their contraptions, and in fact couldn't even throw kunai and shuriken, having to rely on weapons mounted to their wings that launched rounds that appeared like thicker and longer samban than a ninja might normally use. The majority of their troops, however, came from odd large vehicles that simply dropped them onto the battlefield. They swept in over it, and opened doors where the sky ninja would leap out of and into combat. When supported by the air-based shinobi, it was a nightmare for Konoha to adapt to. Now, though, there had been an opportunity that presented itself. Come on. We'll brief you on the road, Jiraiya commanded, and the 2 teams fell into step behind him as he began walking down the road. They would take to the trees soon enough. You all know this isn't your usual mission, right, kids? Jiraiya asked, getting nods from all 6 young genin. He eyed his son a bit longer than the rest before he continued. If it was up to me, you would all be running logistics missions like genin are supposed to, but the Hokage himself has decided to place his faith into you. We will be joining up with a team of jonin and chunin that are launching an assault on one of the enemy's airships. They have to land to retrieve their troops after battle, so we set up an ambush. Hopefully the fighting will be done when we get there, and we will just pile into the ship with them. If not, then prepare yourselves for fighting shinobi. The Sannin was serious and stern as he spoke, making it clear this was something they needed to take seriously as well. Fighting shinobi is different from the bandits or other criminals you've fought before. They are far more deadly, and they will not hesitate to kill you despite your young ages. Don't hesitate in returning that favor, Tsukumo added in. You 6 are the best of your generation. After this scuffle with the Sky Village is over and done with, I am intent on getting you all pressed on to Chunin. I have no doubt that you will deserve it, Jiraiya said with a proud smile as the kids stood a little taller at that suggestion. Sensei, where are we meeting the others at exactly? Naruto asked. We'll be headed to the Land of Rivers. It's the new frontline for this war. After we are on board the Sky Village ship, we'll use it to invade directly into their flying fortress. It's more like a city, really. Once there, our objective is to destroy the ceiling arrays and power source that keeps the city afloat and crash it. As much as having a mobile flying city adds defense to their home, it also leaves a major weakness, Jiraiya explained. Gravity, Minako said. Simple but effective, I guess. Kushina nodded as she spoke. Exactly. Now unless you have any more questions, let's get into the canopy and get underway, Jiraiya said as he launched up into the branches followed by Tsukumo and the rest of the team. Back in Konoha, Tsunade and Orochimaru were hard at work on their own tasks. Already wounded were beginning to filter in from the new front line, and Tsunade was leading the medical teams as was usual. Orochimaru had been the one to get the exact location of the hidden sky village. She had worked for a couple days straight on a young Chunin woman from Konoha's newest enemy and gotten literally everything she had to offer. Orochimaru knew more about this poor woman now than most of her former allies did. Done with that, she had moved to help her teammate in any way she could in the hospital. She was no true medic nin, but she had plenty of medical jutsu under her belt thanks to Tsunade's insistence and the necessity of keeping her subjects alive for questioning in her normal work. That being said, her bedside manner was worse than Tsunade's was. She was a bit prone toward the tough love approach and encouragement through mockery. How exactly being poked and prodded roughly while being mocked mercilessly by a beautiful woman was supposed to help patients was known only to Orochimaru herself. Right at this moment though, both she and Tsunade were getting a much-needed breather. The number of casualties was high, but there was little outside of basic puncture or tearing injuries from the projectile weapons of the sky shinobi or from kunai and swords on the ground. Take away their technology, and these sky ninja are weaklings. Barely even worthy to be called shinobi, Orochimaru said to Tsunade while disgusted by the means that their enemies had decided to increase their power. It's effective enough though, Tsunade grumbled as she powered through a small meal to regain some energy for healing the wounded. It will only cause rot from within, relying on this technology to replace the power of individual shinobi. They can hardly even use ninjutsu. If they were to win, their shinobi would all grow lazy and fat in 5 years, Orochimaru said, eyeing her blonde friend as she spoke. That is true. They can hardly throw a kunai even. Oh ho. I see what you're doing, very good Oro, but you don't have to distract me with this. I know he's going to be fine, Tsunade said after realizing that Orochimaru was trying to play up how weak the enemy was to subconsciously ease her worry about Naruto. Of course he is. He is a different breed. Him and the little redhead and that blonde girl would chew through these sky ninja like candy, Orochimaru said, only to blink when Tsunade's expression changed to complete worry. Or what if Tsunade began only for Orochimaru to cover her mouth? No, absolutely none of that. As much as I hate admitting it, Jiraiya is capable of protecting them. Especially Naruto. They will be fine. Orochimaru locked her eyes with Tsunade until the blonde woman slowly nodded. When she released her, the snake Sannin could only grin at the glare Tsunade sent her way. Don't do that again, she growled. No promises, Tsunade. When it comes to Naruto, you tend to get worked up. Like I said, they are in good hands, even if Jiraiya is typically a completely idiotic fool, Orochimaru said. Tsunade sighed but turned her attention back to her food. She knew the dark-haired woman was right. For all of his faults, her old flame was possibly Konoha's strongest shinobi right now, and Tsukumo was in the running as well. You are being awfully nice today. Even complimenting Jiraiya. What's gotten into you? Tsunade teased. Oh, well, it was the day spent playing nurse. It's actually kind of fun. What do you think about me getting one of those uniforms? The really tight white ones with the little hat? Orochimaru asked. Someone catch your eye? Tsunade asked, very interested. She wanted Orochimaru to have a chance at a happy life in spite of all her odd quirks. She was her closest friend after all. Not yet, no, but you are the only one I would ask this kind of thing about. I have an image to uphold. The snake mistress giggled. Tsunade smiled faintly. It was nice to distract herself from always worrying about Naruto. She honestly wondered if she would still get as worried when he was older, or if she would be more accepting of her son living as a shinobi did. The airship that was supposed to have been captured by the time Naruto and the others arrived, most assuredly was not. The team of Jonin and Chunin had not expected that the airship itself had several of the weapon launchers that the sky shinobi used installed along its ramp. While they had prevented the craft from taking off, the team sent to seize the aircraft and take over command of it had been killed in the wide open space just outside the entrance. Now both sides were at a standoff. While the Sky Ninja lacked any formidable jutsu to truly defeat the Konoha shinobi trying to gain entrance, the Konoha ninja lacked the numbers to make a direct assault on the ramp. At least until the likes of two of Konoha's most legendary shinobi and their students arrived. The tide quickly turned after that, with Jiraiya catching the Sky Ninja in some sort of mucusy glue that was mostly made of water. A perfect conductor for Tsukumo to easily finish them off. Unable to fight back, they were easy pickings for Konoha's White Fang. Move in and wipe the enemy out. No prisoners. Tsukumo barked, and the Jonin and Chunin that were no longer pinned down rushed inside, ready to pay back the defenders. The fight was short. The airships had a small crew in exchange for plenty of space to carry their soldiers into battle. Luckily, the troops meant to fill the cargo hold of the Sky Ninja vessel had already been handled, and in their place Naruto and his friends, and their 2 teachers joined a small collection of other shinobi for their planned attack on the Sky Shinobi Fortress. You've all done well to get us this far, but it's only the beginning. As you know, our plan is to take this ship and use it to directly assault the enemy's home base. Our scouts have put it out over the Land of Rivers coastline. We hope to be able to land this airship onto their flying base uncontested. However, you all well know how plans like that work out in reality. Jiraiya explained. The shinobi gathered nodded their heads solemnly. After all, they had already experienced their plans being fouled up on this mission. The loss of their comrades in taking the airship was felt profoundly. It has been decided by the Hokage himself that the technology of the Land of Sky cannot be allowed to be recreated. Even among our own forces. We will destroy whatever power source the enemy's home utilizes to stay aloft, and evacuate on the civilian airships that our scouts have spotted buzzing around. There will be a short window, ladies and gentlemen, so we need to evacuate quickly once we achieve our objective. Tsukumo took over from Jiraiya. Any questions? Get them out of the way now, because there won't be another chance. Jiraiya said. Actually, Lord Jiraiya, Lord Tsukumo, why are you bringing your genin teams? Isn't this a bit too risky for them? Not to mention who they all are. One of the shinobi asked. His comment not exactly directed at Issei and Minako but more at Naruto, Kushina, Tsum, and Shibi. Our genin may be young, but I think you will find them more than capable for this mission. Unless you are doubting the wishes and commands of your Hokage? Jiraiya asked sharply. The shinobi balked slightly at the insinuation and wisely backed off. Jiraiya felt a little bad at telling the kid off like that, especially when he agreed that the genin should not be there. Especially his son. Orders were orders though, and he needed to impress upon the others that they could rely upon Naruto and his friends. They couldn't risk a breakdown in unit cohesion due to doubts springing up at the fact some of their force was still half a decade from even starting puberty. Alright. If there are no more questions, then we need to get started. This is normally where an officer blusters up with some sort of emotional and passionate speech to get everyone riled up for a fight and to bolster morale. I'm not going to bullshit you though. This is going to be a brutal fight and a hard mission. However, if we pull this off, it will be all the show of force that Lord Third needs to drive the final peace treaty home with the other major villages and end this war. I have faith in you. The Hokage has faith in you, and Konoha and the Land of Fire all have faith in you. With that kind of backing, we can't fail. So let's just get this job done and go home for a victory round at the bar. Jiraiya was bellowing by the end, getting cheers from the troops. Naruto clapped for his father while his 2 teammates shared the same reaction as Tsukumo and his team. Flat stares and unimpressed looks. I thought your sensei said something about not blustering up an emotional and passionate speech, Kushina said. I believe that was a ruse of some sort. Perhaps to allow the listeners to be stirred up by an impassioned speech when they don't expect one. Shibi hypothesized. You make it sound like he ambushed everyone with his words or something. Some scoffed. You're looking too much into it, man. Jiraiya sensei is just kinda weird, Issei commented. Like he's any better. Minako and Kushina mumbled quietly to one another. That is enough standing around, kids. Let's run a check again to make sure we have everything we need when we land. Tsukumo began before his head turned to where one of the shinobi left in the cabin of the vessel came bursting into the room and made a beeline for Jiraiya and Tsukumo himself. This can't be good, Issei bemoaned. Tsukumo and Jiraiya took the man's report before jumping into action. They sprinted back to the cabin, the genin hot on their heels to see what the matter was and help their teachers if they could. Upon arriving back at the cabin, though, an odd sight awaited them. The shinobi present worriedly held a pair of flags while staring across the open expanse of sky toward another sky shinobi airship that had revealed itself from the clouds. On the other craft's deck, a pair of sky ninjas stood, one waving the pair of multicolored flags in his hands in clearly specific order to send some kind of message. They are trying to signal us, Tsukumo ground out through gritted teeth. Shit, Jiraiya said, running a hand down his face. Oh. Ooh, I heard of this. Seminole. It's a Seminole message, Issei announced proudly. I believe you mean semaphore, Shibi corrected him. That's what I said. Sigmaphone, Issei replied. Jiraiya tried not to sigh too heavily but gently grabbed his eldest student's shoulders. He turned the boy to face him and gave him the most serious look that any of Jiraiya's pupils, even his own son, had ever seen. "Issei, can you use this Similone?" Jiraiya asked. "Sigmaphone sensei." Issei tried to correct him. "No, it is semaphore. Communication through the use of flags to signal someone in specific orders is called semaphore," Shibi said in a surprisingly agitated tone from his usual stoic one. "All right, semaphore. Can either of you understand and use it?" Jiraiya asked. The two boys turned to look at one another for a brief moment before slowly turning back to Jiraiya. "Sorry, sensei, I can't," Issei admitted with a sad expression. "I also must apologize. Why? Because I too cannot utilize semaphore to communicate," Shibi added in. Jiraiya huffed a defeated sigh before regaining his composure. He turned to the Jonin and Chunin in the room and waved them over. "Let everyone on board know we are about to fight," Jiraiya said as he turned to watch the enemy ship slowly ascend above them and begin moving into a place directly overhead. "Go now!" Tsukumo barked, sending the younger two ninja racing back to the others to get them ready. "Kami forbid it ever be an easy day," Jiraiya complained as he began directing the genin to prepare to repel boarders. The Konoha shinobi quickly realized that their numbers would make it difficult to defend the airship adequately. The sky shinobi would be dropping en masse directly on top of the commandeered vessel and forcing their way in. So most of the shinobi were spread through the narrow halls of the ship, something to negate any superior numbers that the sky ninja had. Even the genin were placed into a position to ambush the enemy. Tsukumo and Jiraiya were the only two that intended to fight the enemy head-on in the main cargo area. Naruto and the others hoped they didn't overdo it and tear the airship apart in their fight. As for the actual genin themselves, Naruto and Minako were placed outside of the pilot's cabin. They were the last and best line of defense for the airship controls. Kushina and Sum were placed outside the engine, an odd device covered in all manner of seals that kept it running, and lastly Issei and Shibi were placed within the armory across the hall. If the enemy shinobi attacked the engine room, the two of them could sweep in from behind and hit the sky ninja where it hurt. Soon the first of the sky shinobi began landing on top of the airship. They used chakra to cling to the craft as they scaled down to the various avenues of entry available to them. Some performed a powerful utility jutsu that created a small but incredibly strong jet of flame, hot enough to cut into the hull of the airship and gain entry that way. Moments after the first sky ninja gained entry, the battle began. Ambushed by hidden Konoha forces, the sky shinobi were clearly outmatched in terms of skill and ability. Their numbers still made them one hell of a threat though. Slowly they pushed further in, only for their hapless forces to run into Jiraiya and Tsukumo lying in wait for them. In a flash the cargo area was engulfed in flames. Hot enough to kill but nowhere near strong enough to melt steel beams. The craft held together easily even against the onslaught of fire that Jiraiya was using as a weapon. Tsukumo wove in and out of their opponenta, his blade flashing white and then red with every strike. The sky shinobi attempted to retreat from the cargo area only for their path to be blocked by several of the other shinobi that butchered them as they ran for the door. Needless to say, the cargo area of the ship was secure and the bulk of the sky shinobi forces were dispatched. Similarly to the events in the cargo hold, Naruto and Minako proved to be a perfect team as any enemies that approached their position met a rapid and violent end. Between Minako's natural flexibility, speed, and pinpoint accuracy and Naruto's overwhelming jutsu and unpredictable movements, they wiped any attempt on the airship controls out entirely, and without any support. The other two pairs of genin were not having such a successful time. Sum and Kushina kept their objective safe, but the enemy attacking them proved to be a bit more skilled. Most sky ninjas seemed practically untrained in using jutsu, but this man, easily in his 30s, broke that mold. He utilized lightning chakra with incredible ease and took both Sum and her Niken down with ease as they launched an attack against them. He hadn't the Inuzuka heiress or her cabin companion, but the way Sum screamed and they both convulsed told Kushina they were out of the fight. As was typical with Kushina, she didn't think, just acted on instinct. Thankfully it was enough. The adamantium chains that she had worked so hard with tore out the shoulders of her clothing and sprang to life like a pair of golden chain tentacles. The sky ninja attempted to send a current of lightning chakra down the length of the chains only to gasp as they absorbed every bit of the attack. The redhead girl pressed her advantage before she could react to the development, and wrapped him tightly in her chains before they twisted painfully, and eviscerated him on the spot. Across the hall, Issei and Shibi had tried to jump into the girl's aid but were caught in the hall by a handful of Sky Village Shunin. Either Issei or Shibi were skilled in direct combat, and instead found themselves fighting for their lives in the hall. The Sky Ninja showed no mercy toward the two boys and came at them with everything they had, so the two of them returned the favor. The fight was brutal and dirty. Issei's Genjutsu proved invaluable and he limited the enemy numbers by confusing them. Shibi's Kakachu went to work as well, chewing through what reserves the Sky Ninja had and weakening them for the two boys to turn the tide of battle. Eventually they managed to defeat of their opponents. Sadly, the two of them would learn never to turn you back on a downed enemy until you were certain they were dead. They both turned away to go help Tsum and Kushina in the engine room, only for one of the downed ninja to use his last breath to fire his kunai launched. The blade shot out of his weapon with enough velocity to pass cleanly through Shibi's shoulder. The boy screamed in agony as Issei tried to staunch the bleeding as best as he could. Thankfully by this point Tsukumo, Jiraiya, and many other shinobi had arrived to help. They got Tsum, Shibi, and Tsum's Niken gathered up with the other wounded before they returned to the cabin where Minako and Naruto awaited them. "Where's Shibi and Tsum?" Naruto asked. He was a bit worried for the other genin even if he didn't know them well. "They were wounded but both will pull through," Jiraiya reassured his son with a small grin. Tsukumo was less on board with just brushing their injuries off though. "Jiraiya, things have to change. The plan has to change. Some of us will need to get the wounded to the evacuation craft, while the rest complete the mission," he said seriously. "I know. They're both your genin, so you lead the wounded and those that we can spare to the evacuation. Loan me Kushina and my team will take the rest to hunt down the power system for the floating fortress," Jiraiya replied. Tsukumo looked like he might argue in regards to Kushina but knew that the elders and the Hokage wanted Kushina and Naruto to make noticeable impacts on this mission. He could argue that their tasks defending the airships so far might be enough, but he knew that with those old bastards in charge it wouldn't be. "Very well then. As soon as we land," Tsukumo began but was interrupted by the airships shaking. "What the hell is going on?" Jiraiya bellowed into the communication system that was pipes through the rest of the ship. There was silence for a time before another voice came back. "One of the Sky Shinobi played dead, sir. He used himself as an improvised bomb to try to destroy the airship engine. This engine core thing is beyond fucked. We'll be losing altitude soon," a shinobi replied. "So much for landing. Will we be able to at least make it to the target? As tough as it was to capture this thing, it won't be near as easy next time," Tsukumo commented. "We will land. It will just be a crash landing. Relax, White Fang, it will all work out," Jiraiya placated the man. "Just get us there, Toad. I don't want my genin to suffer any more than they have to. Let's get this damned mission over with," Tsukumo complained. "After all that, some got hurt for nothing. They busted the engine anyway," Kushina grumbled unhappily. "It wasn't for nothing. You two protected the engine so we could continue the mission. We wouldn't have gotten into range of the floating fortress if it wasn't for you two," Naruto reassured her, causing the girl to smile lightly and place a peck on his forehead. She couldn't believe she used to be so awful to such a sweet boy. "Hey look. It's coming into view now," Minako said, pointing out of the window. "It's massive," Issei whispered in shock. The floating fortress really was massive. The size of the Hokage mountain but flying in the air. It bustled with activity that they could easily see. People moved across its surface rapidly, and dozens if not more of airships of all sizes moved around it. "It's almost sad to have to destroy something like that," Minako said solemnly. "Maybe, but it's for the best. Things like that will only make war worse in the future if they aren't destroyed and forgotten forever," Jiraiya said seriously, completely committed to their mission. "So how are we going to land this thing on there? Especially with the engine about to go out?" Kushina asked. "Well, let's just say land is a subjective term open to various interpretations," Jiraiya joked, getting a mix of flat and horrified looks in response. "You're going to crash us," Naruto quietly commented. "Right through the buildings," Minako added with a frightened voice. "You have got to be kidding." "You're kidding, right, Jiraiya-sensei?" Issei asked, growing more worried as the man refused to acknowledge him and instead sat down at the controls. "Better tell everyone to strap on and get buckled up yourselves, kids. We are about to have a hell of a ride," Jiraiya said with a cackle. "He isn't kidding." Issei paled. The genin rushed to warn everyone and strap themselves in. Jiraiya just continued to chuckle as he angled the airship for a sudden and rough landing in the village hidden in the sky. Or rather, into the village hidden in the sky. It was a rough landing. Naruto was thankful both for the surface walking exercise that let him grip his seat without actually having to let go of both Minako and Kushina's hands, and the Sky Village engineer that had the forethought of installing safety harnesses to keep from ejecting passengers out of their seat. For instance, if said passenger had a possibly unhinged father that decided that doing as much damage with their crash landing as possible was the best course of action. When the airship impacted, it smashed through rows of buildings, likely houses and the like for the citizens of the Land of Sky. Building burned and collapsed in their wake, and Naruto ignored the definite screams of terror, pain, and fear that seemed to only grow worse as their own aircraft came to a stop. "Sakumo, you know what to do," Jiraiya called over. "You don't have to tell me, Jiraiya," Sakumo said as he bolted out of his seat and back to the wounded. Hopefully the crash landing hadn't worsened their conditions. "Alright, you six, you're all with me. Let's go," Jiraiya said, turning to the 4 genin and the pair of older shinobi accompanying them. "Be ready for a running battle all the way to the core. Stick together and let me handle any real bruisers we come across. I have the firepower to beat anybody on this hunk of junk, so stay with me," the Sannin said before shooting off toward an exposed hallway. The path they two had once been completely interior hallways, but the impact of their landing ship and the subsequent collapses of buildings had made sure that every few hundred yards a gaping hole had been ripped through the wall. Some just wide enough to let in light, others big enough to act more like doorways than just windows. "The floating fortress seems built similarly to the airships, Lord Jiraiya," one of the shinobi with them said. "That's my thoughts exactly. We'll head for the center of the complex, and that will most likely be our objective," Jiraiya said. Naruto listened but kept his attention on his surroundings. Besides several burnt or crushed corpses, they hadn't come across any shinobi. The civilians they found fled in terror when they neared them. That was for the best. Though if they were smart, these people would realize what Konoha ninja being inside their home meant. They would start looking for ways to evacuate themselves. "Look out!" one of the shinobi screamed just before he and his comrade took the specialized launcher kunai to the throat and face. The blows killed them instantly, and Naruto felt a bit bad that he never even knew their names. He didn't have time to really dwell on it though. His hands flew through a series of ensigns and he stunned their enemy by expelling wood from his hands in a shape not all that unlike the one their own kunai launchers fired. The wood tore them apart in a shower of gore, but the team continued past them without slowing down. With the numbers so heavily against them, they had to work quickly before the Sky Shinobi could retaliate properly. "I think we're almost there, kids, just a little bit further," Jiraiya said before he pulled up short. Ahead of them, a diminutive man, perhaps half the height of the abnormally tall Jiraiya, stood alone in the hallway. Behind him, the door to the engine room clamped shut. "You Konoha shinobi are too bold for your own good," the man said before his body seemed to crackle as chakra swept over him. "Shit, Naruto, all of you. I'm leaving it to you. This guy is Kage level. I am going to fight him to buy you time to get into the engine room and complete the mission, understood?" Jiraiya asked, getting nods. "That's fine with me, Jiraiya of the Sannin. Your students will die to mine just like you will die to me. Take solace in the fact that none of you will live to see your home destroyed as mine and my people's were," the man called over to them. "What do you mean?" Jiraiya asked. "You didn't realize it? Don't you find it strange that such a place as the Hidden Sky could come into being seemingly overnight? We are the dispossessed. Children of a dozen hidden villages wiped off of the map from the wars of the great villages. Even now your 5 nations are hardly damaged while entire smaller countries cease to exist," he monologued. "Go on, kids. I'll handle this mouthy bastard," Jiraiya said as he and the other man approached each other. "You heard him. Come on," Naruto said as he dragged the others with him toward the door. Inside, 3 young adults stood waiting for them, each clearly far more skilled than the typical Sky Shinobi they had faced so far. "Children?" one asked. "Konoha must have lost more troops in the war than our reports indicated. Scraping the bottom of the barrel. Oh, what is this?" the female of the group and apparent leader said before dispelling the genjutsu that Issei had attempted to use with ease. "Oh shit," the boy said in worry. "I was hoping for more of a challenge. Something worthwhile to use all that sensei has taught us, but these brats aren't worth it. I mean, look, that one is barely out of diapers," the final member of the team said as he gestured toward Naruto. Naruto and his teammates didn't respond. They didn't have an opportunity to. Their enemies seemed to want to get things over with as soon as possible. Thankfully, they completely underestimated their team, launching into basic taijutsu with their kunai only to come away with several small injuries all their own. More than meets the eye then," the leader said as she and her comrades fell back momentarily. "You two take the girls, the boy and the pipsqueak are all mine." Once more the two teams clashed, the older shinobi using their size and reach advantage to great effect. It didn't last long though. Kushina had enough of this mission and these assholes looking down on her. With a shout, her uniform's back was torn as 6 chains burst free, this time rather than just 2. It took incredible focus to maintain the constructs as she lashed out against her enemy, but it was effective. Her opponent died quickly. A 4-inch wide golden chain crashing through his chest right where his heart would be. Minako's opponent didn't even see Kushina's chains coming as they tightly wound themselves around his throat and yanked him off of his feet, roughly enough to snap his neck in 2. The Sky Kunoichi saw the deaths of her team and howled in animalistic rage. She plunged her blade forward toward Naruto, only for a body to shove him out of the way. Issei took a graze across his jaw to save Naruto, but the Kunoichi didn't care who her victim was as long as they wore the symbol of the Leaf Village. Issei attempted to defend himself, but the young woman overpowered the 13-year-old with ease. Her kunai stuck halfway through his neck and he dropped to the floor. Dumbfounded by the sudden death of his teammate, Naruto saw red. He rushed forward toward the Kunoichi and punctured her stomach with a long, thin rod of wood he had formed. He used no hand signs for the attack, the blade had just formed by his own will. The woman stumbled back as blood quickly drenched her lower half. However, what caught the others, including Naruto, off guard was the screaming as she clawed at her stomach. It first seemed like the pain was too much for her before a thick tree branch burst from her chest, followed by another and another until a new tree had grown suddenly. Its bark was painted red with blood and the horrific sight of her remains decorated its canopy. While both Kushina and Minako stood dumbstruck at the horrific sight, Naruto turned his attention to the objective, briefly hesitating as his eyes drifted over Issei's body. Unlike before, Naruto ran through a series of hand signs. Ones he knew but rarely used, and before he called out the jutsu that he had read so much about. Nativity of a world of trees. He whispered rather than roared, and his chakra obeyed. Out of nothing, massive overgrowth sprouted forth, expanding over the room and tearing the engine apart. They didn't stop there though. While portions of the village hidden in the sky suddenly looked as if they had been devoured by a forest. Like they were ruins left to rot and be consumed by nature. Once again, Minako and Kushina were awestruck at the power of the boy before them. That awe turned to worry as he teetered on his feet before collapsing from chakra exhaustion. Naruto! They both cried, running over to him just as Jiraiya stumbled into the room. The corpse of his opponent left in the hallway, impaled on a tree branch that had suddenly ripped through the wall behind him. Give him here. I'll carry him and Issei both. We need to book it, this whole place is going down now. Jiraiya barked. The girls ran after him as they all rushed to link back up with Sakumo and the others. The fortress had fallen to complete chaos. Warning blared and people screamed as they tried to evacuate. It was terrifying, but it also meant victory. Now all that was left was to go home. When he woke back up again after the ordeal in the village hidden in the sky, Naruto realized he recognized the room he was in. It was one set aside by Tsunade for the explicit purpose of tending to Naruto, or now Naruto and Kushina, whenever he was hurt or ill. Tsunade insisted that she had faith in the doctors and medical staff of her village, but she was the best there was and her baby only got the best. Even if that meant she was taking care of him herself. His mother had clearly had Jiraiya place some sort of seal on him, because almost the moment he awoke she was already there with Orochimaru, Kushina, and Minako all in tow. You're finally awake, Tsunade said teasingly, but the obvious note of relief in her voice gave her away almost as much as the act of suddenly snatching Naruto up off of his bed and into her arms. The others giggled at the action as Naruto simply returned the hug, happy to be in his mother's arms after his ordeal. It ended soon enough though, and Naruto turned to look at the others. How long was I asleep? The boy asked. Over a week. I don't think you've ever used so much chakra before, Kushina said. Anyone else would have died. Be very thankful you are who you are, Naruto, Orochimaru said in a somewhat scolding tone. That was surreal. Orochimaru never took a tone like that with him. Then again, he did almost kill himself with that last jutsu. Yes, it seems we are going to have a discussion about how much is too much, Tsunade said with a sigh. She dreaded when her son became a teenager, and she really had to worry about what he got up to. So the Land of Sky is gone then? Naruto asked. There's a couple of airships that attacked near the border, but they were defeated. We think that the Land of Sky is destroyed once and for all, Minako said. Naruto nodded before his thoughts went to Issei. They weren't especially close, but they were friends. He had also died after saving Naruto's own life. That would take time to come to terms with for him. The women and girls seemed to understand his feelings. They all placed comforting hands on his arms to soothe him a bit. What about the treaty that Lord Third wanted to show force for? Naruto asked. The others glanced at one another. Your father left with the Hokage and Tsukumo for the summit to discuss the treaty today. We weren't sure when you would wake up, so he had to leave with the Hokage. Otherwise, he would be right here," Tsunade replied. "So we don't know if the war is over yet?" Naruto asked. "Even if the other nations don't agree, things are winding down. Iwa and Suna have already agreed to peace. Neither is strong enough at the moment to take down the other, and Kumo and Kiri are both too weak to make any gains against us. Right now we are the only ones that could attack the other great villages, but that would weaken us a lot too. Treaty or not, the fighting for this war is over," Orochimaru explained. The boy nodded. He didn't fully comprehend the geopolitical aspect of it, but anyone could understand they don't have enough people to attack us, and we don't want to risk the people that we would need to attack them. "I don't really remember before the war," Naruto admitted, a bit confused about what it would be like without the conflict hanging over them all the time. "You weren't even born yet. That's why," Orochimaru chuckled. "Hopefully the peace will last," Minako said. Orochimaru and Tsunade looked doubtful, but they didn't want to ruin the mood. They knew that even in peacetime there could be conflict for shinobi. They were both born before the first war after all. Just a couple years before, but still before it had started. The first Hokage had even died in peacetime. They didn't want to think about the fact that with Issei Kurama killed, the teams were being reorganized as well. Jiraiya was getting Naruto, Kushina, and Minako all on one team. It was a strong team, but the Hokage had refused to promote them to Chunin yet, even after what they had accomplished in the Land of Sky. The old monkey was up to his games yet again. It had been nearly 10 months since the fall of the Land of Sky, and Konoha had really solidified itself as the solitary victor of the Second Shinobi World War. 10 months since Jiraiya had reorganized his team. 10 months since Issei had died. Much had changed since then. Peace talks had been continuous, and roughly 3 months prior the villages had finally entered into a treaty. A real treaty between the 5 great nations. Peace had finally come. Which was why it was all the more confusing for Naruto and his 2 teammates. They were the 3 most capable of their graduation batch, but of those still alive, they were the only ones not promoted to Chunin. Since Issei had died, Naruto as well as Kushina and Minako had thrown themselves into training like never before. They were older now, more capable than ever before, and far more experienced after the tail end of the war. Still their friends advanced while they did not. The 3 of them, as well as many others, speculated all sorts of reasons why. From some plan with the higher-ups to a secret deficiency all 3 had hidden away. All things considered, Tsunade was pretty happy that all 3 were still genin. Even if Orochimaru thought that it was an insult to their accomplishments, and was certain Jiraiya had done something to get his team punished. At least until both women were brought into the plans that Hiruzen had. Both had immediately flipped their opinion of the situation following that. As was typical when she was upset, Tsunade had broken several things. Orochimaru was happy as can be, claiming that it would be worth it all. Despite that, Naruto and his teammates remained in the dark. Even as they were left to train alone more and more, as their sensei joined the Hokage in several meetings with other Kage, or acted on his behalf as a diplomat to other villages. Hopefully today that would end though. Alongside nearly a dozen other genin teams, all several years older and much less talented than they were, they gathered in the courtyard outside the Hokage Tower. Their team leaders gathered at the back along the wall, while in front of them the village elders, Hokage, several important jonin, and even a representative of the daimyo stood before them. "Thank you all for coming. It's odd for so many genin to be gathered together. However, that is precisely why you have been gathered," Hiruzen began. His words echoed over the area as the group of genin silenced themselves. "You all are the future of our village. The shinobi that will carry out Will of Fire on into the next generation. That is why you have been chosen for this plan," he continued. Naruto hummed quietly as thoughts about what the Hokage was planning filled his head. This was sounding like the kind of inspirational speech given to soldiers during a briefing for an especially difficult mission. That was a bit worrying, especially being as the war was supposed to be over. "Some of you may feel you have been held back from advancement after earning it in the last year. Let me tell you here and now that your concerns regarding that have some merit. It is unfair perhaps, but for the good of the village, myself and my advisors must have you tested once more before granting you the vests and ranks you feel you deserve." The crowd began to murmur slightly. Confused whispers filtered over the heads of the nearly 40 genin. Many, like Naruto, had thought perhaps they were being briefed for some mission. They couldn't really guess what kind of mission might need so many genin, but after the Hokage's words that line of thought felt less certain. "This test will be deadly and dangerous, but will also be a first step into a more peaceful and pragmatic world than the one you know of today. You will compete against each other as well as genin from other villages in a series of events that will decide whether or not you will earn the rank of Chunin. An exam to replace the warfare we have grown weary of. One where some of you may die and all of you will be pushed to your limits in front of an audience gathered from across the elemental nations. I have faith in you, as does the rest of our village, to not only earn your promotions but to bring honor and victory to our village." With that, Hiruzen bowed to the genin gathered, shocking them, though they all quickly moved to return the gesture to their esteemed leader. The third Hokage stepped back and a collection of jonin moved forward and began giving them details of what they needed to do. The exam was to take place in Konoha in a month's time. Their village had clearly been the victor of the war and was making the move for this new attempt at peace by inviting the other villages literally into their home to show their sincerity. Sadly, they were not going to be told what to expect from the test, except that the first takes was an individual test, the second was a team test, and the last was a tournament with an audience. That made it hard to really prepare for the exam beyond continuing their already arduous training and improving as much as they could across the board. Thankfully, Naruto, Kushina, and Minako all had no problem with the idea of a grueling training regimen. Tsunade, however, was not about to step aside and let her son and the two girls she was rather fond of injure themselves in training. Not that she was all that pleased with the idea of the kids participating in the exams. She thought the entire concept was a bit ludicrous, honestly. Still, she had placed a bet that all three of the kids would make it into the semi-finals of the tournament. Knowing that the team was effectively Konoha's method of cheating, she felt pretty confident in that bet. Even if Jiraiya had seemed upset with her for betting on his team. Something about trying to curse the kids. The team had spent the time they had left trying to round out their abilities even more. Minako had managed to expand her repertoire of Fuinjutsu pretty extensively in a short time frame. She'd also managed to pin down an ability only the most experienced, or at times most prodigious Fuinjutsu users could. While it was common to learn to inscribe seals using only chakra to effectively score them into surfaces, doing so in the heat of battle when your focus had to be perfect for the seal was another matter entirely. Despite the difficulty and inherent danger of utilizing sealing in such a way, though, she worked at it until she was completely confident in her newfound skill. Similarly, Kushina had been training as hard as she could. Her skill with her chains couldn't really expand much, being as she could nearly use them like a set of tentacles with precise and deadly movements. She had to expand her skill set then. Unfortunately, while she had been interested in perhaps learning medical jutsu and other things from Tsunade, the level of chakra control was something she could never acquire. Not with the QB sealed within her. Instead, she approached her former sensei. Tsukumo had become a bit reclusive lately. Sadly, with his wife's death in the last days of the war, he was raising Kakashi alone, and was struggling to keep his life under control. Despite that, he was happy to provide his student with some techniques and a little bit of training. The fact that Kushina gave him a bit of a break from having to take care of little Kakashi was also very welcome. The redhead adored the little boy and was happy to babysit whenever it was needed of her. From Tsukumo, Kushina picked up quite a few ninjutsu and some basic use of a blade. She kept it sealed up on her wrist, being as she wasn't quite proficient with it, but the short sword was a nice added item in her growing arsenal. As for Naruto, well, unsurprisingly, he grew the most. In the near year between the fall of Sky Country and the start of these Chunin exams, he had thrown himself into better using and controlling his bloodline. On top of that, the elements that went together to form his Mokuton also needed to be strengthened, and between his father and Orochimaru's training, he had gotten a good handle on all of his affinities. His mother had also impressed more advanced forms of the healing techniques he'd already learned from her. All in all, the team seemed more like they were readying up for a hard campaign in enemy territory, not an exam. The way Lord Third and their sensei were making this event sound had them on edge, though, and none of the three of them intended to allow themselves to be caught on the back foot by the trial headed their way. Even now, as they stepped into the large, newly constructed arena alongside the other genin from across the elemental nations, the team was anxious. Most of the other genin had never experienced real direct combat, or seen a teammate be killed. Naruto and the girls were better prepared than likely any of the others, but that didn't stop them from recognizing the fact that the other villages likely put in ringers for the exam like Konoha had done. All thought about such things fell to the wayside as Orochimaru stepped up onto a platform in the center of the arena and began speaking to the nearly 200 contestants before her. "Welcome to Konoha," she said in a sweet voice. One that actually enhanced her intimidating aura far more than a more aggressive greeting could have. A few whispers identifying her among the foreign village genin had the pale woman smiling all the wider. "Each of you is here to earn glory and fame for your village. To participate in what my sensei has dubbed a substitute for actual warfare. You should likely know who I am. If not, then I won't spoil it for you. However, I will say I am acting as the proctor for your first and second tasks in this intriguing exam. Meaning, of course, that your tests have been orchestrated and designed by my own self. So whenever you're bleeding out and fading away, remember this. I was forced to make these tests passable for the average genin. If you fail and die, your village will absolutely not miss a failure like yourself. As she spoke, Orochimaru seemed to take on a gleeful and almost childish humor. Her smile stretched wide and her eyes glittered in the early morning light. She was practically radiant as she soaked the gate and terror-filled looks of the various genin before her. However, when she locked on to Naruto, Kushina, and Minako, her smile seemed to spread only wider, even getting a small smile back from Naruto. Now, my assistants will come through and select you to follow them. You will be split up into 3 groups, 1 person from each team. Then you will all be given a coded message to decipher. You have a time limit, and all members of your team must unlock the message before the test to pass into the second stage. It's incredibly easy compared to what I initially wanted to do. I even doubt any of you will die during this task. Then again, the ciphers for your codes are incomplete. You'll either need to take them from others or work together somehow to use them properly. So, fingers crossed things do manage to get violent. Orochimaru then simply walked off toward the exit of the arena. The Chunin and Jonin assistant proctors began filtering through the genin and assigning them to a section for the task. Is it just me, or is Orochimaru really dialing it up for this exam? Kushina mumbled to Naruto. No, she's just cutting loose. Naruto replied cheerily, causing Kushina to pale slightly and glance at the snake Sanin's retreating form. She couldn't surprise the mild shudder that ran through her being at the curiosity at what could be running through the woman's head. Naruto, follow me to Group 1. One of the proctors called out while another 2 collected Kushina and Minako. The Senju heir did as he was instructed and followed the proctor to where Group 1 was separated from the other 2 groups. A portion of the arena cordoned off with a large tent. Inside, the members of Group 1 silently eyed one another. At the sight of Naruto entering, however, and his clear age difference, most genin began watching him like hungry wolves. A less intense but rather similar situation happened with both Kushina and Minako in their own groups. Kushina's clan could not be more obvious to the likes of the Kumo and Kiri-nin if she wore her clan symbol on her forehead. For Minako, she simply looked like a young civilian girl. Like little to no threat, an easy target. All 3 easily proved how wrong the others' assumptions were. The moment Minako received her code, she began to easily break it and left with the answer within. Most of her fellow group mates had not even managed to figure out the portion of the cipher given to them. Yet Minako easily used the information she gathered from it to figure out the missing portions of her test. Kushina had a pretty easy go of it herself. The time she had spent learning some of her family's bread and butter made such problems a cakewalk. She couldn't figure the missing portions out like Minako could, but some people were bound to volunteer to help her. Hey, Red. You and Uzumaki? A Kumo genin asked. Kushina shot him a look but didn't reply. Look at her, Cloud. Of course she is. Fucking Uzumaki. A Kiri genin, a woman with shark-like features and incredibly pale skin, growled. What if I am? Kushina asked, already well aware of where this conversation was going. Your clan killed my dad. The Kumo boy hissed out hatefully. Shocker, almost like invading Yuzu was a bad idea for your leaders. I bet he didn't even get killed by one of our shinobi. Probably some angry housewife did him in with a frying pan. The Kumo boy's eyes widened in maddened rage as he launched himself at her. He got 2 steps before Kushina's chains had ensnared him and suspended him in the air. She took a moment to look and see if the proctors would interfere, but they clearly had no intention of getting involved. She didn't need to kill the boy, and at that point it might actually cause problems for her and her team if she did, so instead she relieved the boy of his cipher and proceeded to break his legs. The majority of genin in her group edges away from her after that, but the Kiri girl wasn't so inclined. If it hadn't been for your family, Kiri would have eventually won, you know. I'm not stupid enough to try and jump you here like he did, though. The shark-like girl said calmly. You're delusional. And you idiots attacked Yuzu. Not the other way around. Besides, you might not try to jump me, but according to Orochimaru I can use your code to figure my own out. Hand it over or wind up like Cloud over there. Kushina said while jabbing a thumb back toward the whimpering Cloud-nin. Not a chance, you lit. The Kiri genin began only to nearly choke on her own tongue as Kushina embedded a fist into her gut with no hesitation. The redhead relieved the shark-like girl of her code as well before letting her drop onto the ground beside the Cloud-nin. Fucking Konoha raising freaks like the Sannin again. A voice mumbled, though Kushina couldn't pick the speaker out of the group. They would have joined the others on the floor if she could. A few moments later and Kushina was on the move to get ready for the second task. Unknowingly having gotten quite a lot of brownie points with both Orochimaru and Tsunade, who were watching the exams along with the Hokage and a handful of other higher-level shinobi through the Hokage's spying orb. Lastly, Naruto also found himself getting the other competitors' codes through a fight. A fight he had no intention of starting. However, he refused to be pushed around due to his youth and size. After all, for him to be here despite them meant only that he was in fact that far above his competition. Didn't it? He only had to humiliate one shinobi from the hidden rain to make his point without saying anything. After that, he quietly left with his coded message and did as the instructions ordered. The Rain Nin's code allowed him to complete the puzzle. As Naruto landed beside the girls, both happily embraced him for figuring the coded message out. They hadn't doubted him, but now all three were here before even one member of the other teams had arrived. Orochimaru, or rather a mud clone of Orochimaru, smiled down at the trio in pride and joy. In his office, Hiruzen faintly grinned as well. He was rather pleased to see his faith had been well placed. These Chunin exams would ensure the peace between villages, all while ensuring that Konoha remained dominant. Slowly, more and more teams began to arrive. Those whose whole team hadn't passed were then directed to rejoin their teammates back at their temporary housing. They would be getting sent home after their senseis were notified. No need to have so many foreign shinobi in Konoha if it could be helped after all. Eventually, the last of those that managed to make it through the first task were gathered among the other teams. Naruto was a bit surprised that nearly half of the teams were gone. Then again, all it took to fail a team was for a single member to not be able to figure out their code within the time limit, or to be targeted by another contestant. Maybe it should have been surprising that roughly half of them had passed instead. Well, I have to say, I'm a bit disappointed. I had expected fewer of you to pass the first task. Oh well. That will just make the next one so much more interesting. After all, once the second task starts, killing is very much allowed, Orochimaru declared while grinning broadly. She took in the somewhat worried expressions on several genins' faces. They all had an idea how dangerous this could be, even up against other genin. However, while they all had a general knowledge of that danger, some teams had actually faced combat in the war. They were prepared for this, but even more wary than their compatriots. Orochimaru took note of those who were veterans of the war. They looked much like her own favorite team. To the other genin, they didn't really stand out. To the likes of a Sannin, she could pick them out easily and individually. Some of you know what it is you are about to face when fighting one another to the death. Others have only an idea of the challenge before them. Those of you wise enough to realize what lies before you, I congratulate you. You might have that much better of a chance of surviving to make your village proud. She began to walk along her raised platform and leer at the genin before her, causing several to grimace and avoid eye contact with her. It was no secret that Orochimaru was a household name across the elemental nations. For all of the wrong reasons. Even her fellow Konoha shinobi were a bit wary of her. Thankfully, she had family in the Senju household to keep her grounded. Such fear and terror at her mere existence was almost intoxicating for her now. Well, at times like now it was. When it was her own village that avoided her for one reason or another, all due to actions she had taken on their behalf, it was soul-crushing. Her eyes briefly found Naruto's, and she hovered on them for a moment. Such an odd expression rested on his face as he looked back at her. Almost a sense of humor at her actions, but none of the fear she elicited in others. The snake mistress of Konoha smiled and turned her attention to the gathered genin as a whole one more. My little minions in the form of these Chunin will come around to each of you to hand out a scroll. On each of these scrolls is not only your identification but the identity of a target you must pursue to take their scroll. You will also have someone targeting you, of course. Each member of your team will have their own target and be targeted by someone else. Orochimaru explained as the genin began to look at their scrolls and scan the other faces for who they would be after. Your scroll is worth 3 points, your target's scroll is also worth 3 points. All other scrolls will be worth a single point to you, meaning you can take other scrolls and may have to. At the end of the next 3 days you will be approached by a member of my staff and you must have a total of 16 points for your entire team to pass into the third leg of the exams. So prepare yourselves for 3 days spent in the excellently titled Forest of Death. Orochimaru waved her hands toward the dark haunting forest behind her. With that dismissal, the Chunin began collecting teams and escorting them to gates. Naruto's team was surprisingly led by Mikoto, who was wishing them luck and giving a few tips to the younger shinobi the whole way to their gate. Good luck, you three. I'm not supposed to tell you this, but there is no signal to go. We are supposed to take you to the gates and stand here until you figure out you are free to enter immediately. Mikoto explained. Oh. Thanks, Miko, you are the best. Kushina chirped as she and the others thanked the older girl and took off into the forest. As they tree-hopped deeper into the forest, the three genin had a quiet conversation about how they planned to approach the challenges of the second task. So, any idea on how to find out targets? Kushina asked. Should we even go after our targets? Minako asked. What? Of course we should, how else are we going to get to 16 points in 3 days? Kushina asked. I don't think we should actually, Naruto commented, surprising Kushina. Why not? Kushina asked. Well, the scrolls tell us our target, what team they are on, and what gate they entered from. After that though they could go anywhere, or another team might defeat them and take the scrolls we need. On top of that, Kushina, your target, is a fellow Konoha ninja. We shouldn't go after our own. This is still a show to prove our village is better than the others, Minako answered. Yeah, Naruto agreed. Kushina hummed in acceptance. Still we have to get 16 points now. Not quite. Orochimaru said that our own scroll counts as 3. So if we keep all 3 of our scrolls that is already 9 points. We only have to capture at most 7 scrolls. We could get lucky and find one of our targets too, Minako explained. Then where do we start? Kushina asked. Easy, everyone will need water. We follow the river and attack anyone that comes near, Naruto replied. Kushina nodded and followed the lead of the 2 blondes. It didn't take long for the sounds of various teams engaging one another to begin echoing over the forest. Battle cries, clashing weapons, and techniques followed up with screams of pain and death. The Chunin exams were claiming their first victims in history. Naruto and the girls on his team had decided to take an aggressive approach to the forest. Better to hunt than be hunted after all. They tracked the sound of fighting and found 2 teams duking it out loudly near to the river. A team of Tsunade ninja complete with one of their treasured fan users fought tooth and nail against a team from IWA. One of whom utilized a large hammer coupled with impressive earth-style jutsu. The 3 Konoha shinobi just hid among the canopy and watched the fight play out as they did so. They planned on hitting the team that won once they were weakened. Why work hard when you can work smart? Slowly but surely the slightly older IWA team won out over the Tsunade ninja. It was grisly in the end, but the team from the land of Earth stood victorious over the corpses of their opponents. They had quite a few injuries though and were definitely exhausted. The biggest member of the team was the first to go down. He was the one wielding the hammer, and the biggest threat if this turned into a real fight. Kushina took him out by dropping down onto his back and driving the blade Tsukumo had given her down through the older boy's neck and through his heart. The other 2 screamed and reacted surprisingly well. Naruto suspected that they were some of the rare genin that had seen real combat in the war. They leapt away from their previous spots to avoid Naruto and Minako's attacks. The Konoha team still possessed the initiative of battle though and pressed their advantage. Fucking tree-hugging cowardly pieces of the more vocal and foul-mouthed IWA shinobi screamed as Minako force-fed him her kunai, turning his spiel into a gurgling bloody mess. Naruto's opponent attempted to flee at the sight of his comrades dying. He didn't get far though as Naruto ran through a pair of hand signs and snagged the older ninja's ankle with the root. Pinned to the ground like he was now, the shinobi was an easy target for Naruto to efficiently slit the throat of. Already just 1 point away from victory, Kushina happily commented as she used the nearby stream to try and wash some of the blood off of herself. True, but maybe we shouldn't stop at just 16 points, Minako said. What, why? Kushina asked. Well, think about it. Less competition in the next rounds and it hurts the other villages, Minako said, though she did feel a little guilty at such thoughts. She had no illusions that this exam provided a great chance to hurt upcoming generations of enemy shinobi. It only helped Konoha in the long run. It would make Orochimaru happy too, Naruto simply commented as he finished rummaging through the 6 bodies for useful supplies and the scrolls that they needed. Oh whoa. Guys, look. That kunoichi with the fan was supposed to target me, Kushina said as she flipped the item in question around and showed the target information she had. The IWA team had a scroll with that girl on it too. Looks like she was headed toward our gate, and they were headed toward hers, Minako pointed out. Lucky for us the forest is our field of expertise. Some of us more than others, Kushina said as she helped Naruto clean a bit of blood from his hair. The 3 of them decided to hunt for more enemy shinobi in the morning. So they found a place high in the trees and bedded down for the night in a blind made by Naruto's Mokuton. With a secure little hiding place, the 3 still decided to set up a schedule for sentry duty. Kushina happily took the first watch while Minako volunteered for the second and Naruto was pushed into the last watch. They ate some of their rations and bedded down. Kushina gently ran her fingers through Naruto's hair as he used her legs as a makeshift pillow. The youngest member of the team slept peacefully. Minako watched the pair of them. A thoughtful look, one more than usual at least, was clear on her face.